Chapter 15:17. The snowy white sword blade pierced through his body, and Lin let loose a muffled groan as blood flowed from the corners of his lips again. Emperor Beixing was completely dumbstruck. It didn't think that Lin would really stab itself. But couldn't you be a little more accurate if you were going to stab yourself? Why was he stabbing its own waist instead of its heart? Before everyone had a chance to be surprised, something even more astonishing happened. An extremely holy light erupted from the pure white sword blade, which spread to every corner of Lin's body, repairing the damage done to his body and pulverizing that invisible power. Lin's vitality was restored, and he became more and more energized. Obviously, the curse of his pill in 2 hours had been broken. How could this be? Emperor Beixing let loose a cry of horror upon seeing this. The Star of Tragedy is an attack I unleashed at the cost of my life. How could you just stab yourself? That's not fair. That's impossible. Emperor Beixing was extremely agitated by Lin's ability to heal itself. A nonchalant smile appeared on Lin's face. My power is not something you can fathom. Boom! The Star of Tragedy seemed to have been struck by lightning as it stood on the spot. For some reason, it felt as if the man in a flowing white robe was glowing from his body. A man who was able to reach the Tao integration stage of the Return of Void stage was indeed not someone it could fathom. How dare you curse me, Lin? I'll kill you. Su Xiaolan no longer had any reservations after seeing that Lin had recovered from his injuries, and her dragon sparrow sword intent soared into the sky before crashing down upon the Star of Tragedy. At the same time, the Celestial Arch, Zhu Shuza, and Situ Feng also joined the fray. Lin stood silently on the spot and looked on with a nonchalant expression at Emperor Beixing. Oi, are you done flexing? If you are, then let me go back and rest. I'm so tired from trying to break that ball spell technique. A cold and disdainful voice sounded. You're the best, little Xie. Go back and rest. And Lin chuckled as he sheathed his evil slaying sword. The spell technique he had just used was one of little Xie's exclusive spell techniques after she became a divine tool. Vanquish the heavens and slay all evil. Purify. This technique could cleanse the negative effects of the evil slaying sword. Last time, he had used this technique to cure Lu Qianhuan of Patriarch Shuntang's poison needles. Now, it was finally his turn to use it. The effect was not bad. After being stabbed, he immediately felt refreshed. It was much better than getting an injection. Just as he was sighing with emotion, Emperor Beixing let loose a wail of anguish as it was burned by holy flames, torn apart by the phoenix, slashed by Su Xiaolan, and finally completely pulverized by the Celestial Thearch's Celestial Arch seal along with its consciousness. Heaven and earth wailed with grief as a Tao integration stage super mighty figure fell. A sorrowful emotion once again surged into everyone's hearts. A sorrowful blue star appeared in the sky. It seemed to be narrating its past. All of the living beings in the southern region of the Kingdom of the Nine States could see this dazzling star, and countless emotions of sorrow welled up in their hearts as they bathed in its light. Of course, those with powerful cultivation bases could also sense the true intent of Tao from this star, thereby allowing them to progress further on their path of cultivation. Furthermore, the closer one was to the star, the greater the blessings they received. The 3 million cultivators benefited the most. They had received blessings from 2 Tao integration stage super mighty figures in a row, and over a dozen of them were making breakthroughs now. Even those who didn't make breakthroughs were able to attain enlightenment and progress further on their path of Tao. Lin and the others were the closest to Emperor Beixing, and they were able to sense the most. They felt as if they could see Emperor Beixing's life, which was an extremely tragic one. Emperor Beixing's parents were twisted blue spirit bodies, but they gave birth to a green spirit body. The difference in color enraged Beixing's father, and he would often beat Beixing. Beixing's childhood was filled with domestic violence. Due to the harsh environment it lived in, the nutrient fluid it had ingested as a child was poisonous, and it had ingested too much of it, resulting in stones in its body. It was unable to expel bodily fluids, and it almost suffocated to death. However, it managed to survive in the end. Their tribe was the Void Ball tribe, which was a low-level tribe in the Void Spirit realm. Emperor Beixing had been abused as a child, and it was often looked down upon after it finally made its way to the outside world. When it was at school, it was bullied by the school. When it was sick, the doctors also bullied it by giving it some low-quality medicine and vaccinations, which caused irreversible allergies to appear on its smooth skin, and spikes began to grow on its skin. Not only was its strange appearance ostracized by the Void Spirit tribe, but was also ostracized by the Void Ball tribe and its parents. It was as if there was no place for it in this world anymore. Beixing felt like the entire world was filled with sorrow, and there was no place for it to go. It had had enough of this world where no one loved it, and it finally ran away from home. After that, it was as if it had never seen the light of day. The Void Spirit realm was filled with twisted, ghostly beings who took pleasure in bullying Beixing, and its situation became even worse. Beixing could only continue to cry and struggle. There was only one thought in its heart, and that was to survive. No matter how sad and painful it was, it couldn't die. Finally, it met a big sister skeleton one day. The big sister skeleton was the most gentle living being it had ever seen. Not only did she not look down on its spikes, but she would also give it a warm hug, teach it how to cultivate, and feed it delicious food. The big sister skeleton was the only ray of sunshine in its life. She was the only source of warmth in this world. Beixing decided that it was going to repay her when it became successful. Then, when it finally had a promising future, it was sold by Sister Skeleton within the Rare Treasure Pavilion. This is a Void Ball tribe creature with black spikes all over its body. It's extremely rare, and its aptitude for cultivation is also extremely good. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't sell such a rare creature, so you'd better give me a good price. The big sister skeleton was bargaining with the shop owner. Beixing would never forget what the big sister skeleton had said to it. It would never forget the smile on her face, as well as the elated expression on her face when she took the spirit stones and left without even saying anything to it. It treated her like family, but she treated it like a commodity. Sorrow surged forth like a tidal wave. The madness wreaked havoc and devoured its last bit of consciousness. Its only ray of light was ruthlessly snuffed out by reality, leaving it in absolute darkness. This world that was filled with sin and sorrow, it would be great if it was destroyed. When Beixing came back to its senses, the big sister skeleton had already been swallowed into its stomach. It continued on its journey and cultivated with all its might. It had no family, no friends, no lovers, and only sorrow accompanied it. Slowly, it began to enjoy sorrow, death, and all types of failures. It enjoyed the feeling of crying, and it attained a domain of sorrow that allowed everyone to experience its sorrow. Seeing other living beings break down after experiencing its sorrow gave it a sense of satisfaction. As expected, the emotions of this world could be interconnected. Beixing walked further and further down the path of sorrow, and it eventually became the ruler of the Void Spirit tribe realm, becoming the renowned Emperor Beixing. Its sorrow could affect the entire star. In the end, it was beaten up by a few Tao integration stage super mighty figures. In the sky, the blue star of sorrow gradually dimmed. It symbolized the annihilation of the divine Tao, and Lin observed Emperor Beixing's entire life, and he cursed in his heart, "What an idiot!" However, perhaps it was exactly because of the purity of its emotions that Emperor Beixing was able to walk so far down the path of Tao. Chapter 1518. Emperor Beixing had fallen, and Lin, the Celestial Arch, Su Xiaolan, and the others began to return to Nanchao City. Zhu Shuza and Situ Feng looked at Lin and the Celestial Arch with hesitation in their eyes. The Celestial Arch began to explain everything to them in a gentle manner. Just a brief explanation was enough to make the two Vermilion Bird Sect super mighty figures exclaim in admiration. So a day in the heavens is equivalent to a year in the human world? Zhu Shuza was astonished. There must be more opportunities in that place. It's a pity that there are too many variables. Otherwise, You might be able to reap even more rewards if you stayed there. A yearning expression appeared on Situ Feng's face. The Celestial Arch had also considered this issue. After all, cultivating in the heavens was several hundred times faster than usual. Who wouldn't like an environment like this? However, thinking back to it now, he was struck by a sense of lingering fear. If they had stayed in the heavens for one more reincarnation, the entire kingdom of the 9 states would probably have disappeared by the time they returned. And Lin wouldn't be able to increase his cultivation base in this strange space, but he could at least increase his proficiency in his spell techniques. Thus, he had perfected all of his spell techniques, and it was there that he had mastered the seal, the heavens technique. Just from the cultivation environment alone, that place was indeed a rare holy land for cultivation. However, a day in the heavens was equivalent to a year in the human world. Wait, it had been 100 years now, and he wondered how his father was doing when he was recuperating at the 4-9 Immortal Sect. Xiaolan had told him about Mingchuan. She told him that Mingchuan had already reached the soul formation stage and was living a very carefree life on Earth. He was one of the most respected cultivators in the cultivation world. Su Xiaolan didn't tell Mingchuan the truth about Enlin. She only told him that Enlin had gone to another world with the Celestial Arch to cultivate, and she didn't know when he would return. The cultivators from his celestial court also kept this a secret. Thus, 100 years passed in the blink of an eye, and Mingchuan didn't notice anything and continued to be sword immortal. In Tian Lingling, the cultivation prodigy from Earth, had also reached the soul formation stage, and apparently, she had become a lowly goddess. Who said flat-chested and petite women couldn't be goddesses? Tian Lingling had shown the cultivation world that as long as one had a high cultivation base, they could do whatever they wanted, still able to captivate all living things. And Lin listened to Su Xiaolan's story, and he couldn't help but take another glance at Su Xiaolan. She was the one who had truly captivated the world. The divine Phoenix Maiden was a peerless beauty in beauty, and she was already the publicly acknowledged #1 goddess of the kingdom of the 9 states. Even Chang'e's limelight had been stolen by her. Of course, if Chang'e succeeded in Dao integration, Su Xiaolan would still have a worthy opponent. As for Tian Lingling, Enlin had given her 100 years to develop, but she was still a lowly. Bah! No, it was actually a deity transformation stage, cultivator. This was truly too disappointing. He let his imagination run wild. And Lin flew back to Nanchao City with Su Xiaolan and the others. The battlefield had now entered a post-battle cleanup period. Emperor Changsheng was in charge of the cleanup. Some people were responsible for picking up the corpses, some were responsible for picking up the weapons and resources, and some were responsible for treating the wounded. However, all of them stopped what they were doing at the sight of the figures flying toward them in the distance. Someone took the lead, and all 3 million cultivators bowed in unison. Welcome back, Celestial Arch. Welcome back, Sect Leader Enlin. Their voices converged to form a tidal wave that erupted into the heavens. Some of the cultivators had tears in their eyes, while others wore expressions of reverence and reverence. They had used the simplest of words to express their most passionate emotions. If it weren't for the Celestial Arch and Enlin descending from the sky like heavenly gods, they would have most likely already been buried in the ground, and the kingdom of the 9 states would have already fallen. In the face of this spectacular spectacle, even Enlin, who had seen many grand occasions of his life, couldn't help but feel a little moved. He was just about to say something when the Celestial Arch had already begun to bow toward the cultivators up ahead. "I'm sorry." Enlin faltered slightly upon hearing this. The Celestial Arch continued, "All of you have suffered during these past few decades. As the Celestial Arch, I'm very ashamed to have disappeared for 100 years. Now, I'm going to take the initiative and trample the heavenly human tribe to avenge my fallen brethren." Tears welled up in the eyes of all of the cultivators upon hearing this, and some of them were even shedding tears. Trample the heavenly human tribe. Trample the heavenly human tribe. Trample the heavenly human tribe. All of the cultivators roared in unison with battle intent. Ever since the heavenly human tribe had appeared, the kingdom of the 9 states front line had been constantly shrinking, as if they were slowly descending into the abyss of despair. It had been a long time since they had uttered such heroic words. The celestial thearch's appearance was like a flame in the abyss, reigniting all of the cultivator's fighting spirit. The celestial thearch stood in mid-air with his imperial robe flapping in the wind, and he clasped his hands behind his back with a calm expression. And Lin's lips twitched slightly. Why was this déjà vu so strong? Su Xiaolan made her way over to Enlin and poked Enlin's waist with a finger. The celestial thearch is a little like you when he's speaking to everyone. Enlin, he finally knew where this D***MN déjà vu was coming from. This was a kindred spirit. After a series of speeches, the 3 million cultivators had continued to rest and reorganize. Emperor Changsheng had already received news of victory from the Northern Front. According to him, the heavenly human tribe on the Northern Front knew that the divine Phoenix Maiden had gone to the Southern Front to provide reinforcements, so they immediately summoned their army to launch a surprise attack. However, the Great Empress, High Priestess, and Shangwan suddenly appeared to intercept them, resulting in heavy casualties. The heavenly human tribe was worried that some strange, mighty figures would suddenly appear, and they began to retreat from the front line. Hearing this news, everyone's faces lit up with joy. Enlin and the others held a brief discussion before deciding to continue south to the Spirit Lake realm after a short rest. They were going to help the Snake Spirit tribe slay another wave of heavenly human tribe powerful beings. They were going to adopt a spearhead strategy. The Starfire battleship and Emperor Changsheng continued to defend Nanchao City. The Celestial Thearch, Zhu Shuza, and Sidu Feng were going to accompany Enlin's extermination team. Enlin swallowed an immortal pill before sitting down to meditate on the spot to quickly recover from his injuries and recover his strength. He knew that an even more terrifying battle was still to come. They had trump cards, but the heavenly human tribe also had trump cards. Divine heaven stage heavenly humans, as well as the true heavenly gods. The future was still very much up in the air, so all Enlin could do was to conserve his energy and go all out. A woman in a blue dress with short white hair made her way over to Enlin. The bell hanging from her waist jingled in a crisp and clear manner, like the sound of a clear spring crashing against the rocks of a snowy mountain. Enlin opened his eyes with a hint of surprise in his eyes. This was a familiar face. Chapter 1519. This was the holy palace leader of the Snow Maidens, Yanhua. 100 years had passed, but her appearance hadn't changed much. Her long white hair was soft and smooth. Her bright blue eyes were extremely pure. Her skin was as translucent as jade, and her figure was graceful and exquisite. She still looked the same, but there was a hint of coldness and solemnity in her expression. Enlin, a rare smile appeared on Yanhua's face. I'm really happy that you were able to come back alive. Enlin smiled. I'm actually even happier. I heard that all of you chose to join the 4-9 Immortal sect, even after everyone thought that I was dead, and you fought against the heavenly human tribe for the kingdom of the 9 states for several decades. To be honest, I really admire all of you. Yanhua shook her head with a smile. You died for us, so we'll naturally fight for you. The Snow Maidens aren't unreasonable people. Enlin sighed with emotion upon hearing this. During these past few decades, the Snow Maidens had received the acknowledgement of the human race and established a very friendly relationship with them. 100 years ago, no one would have dared to imagine that the sworn enemies who would often fight with each other would actually become good friends and comrades who would go through life and death together. It could only be said that a friend in need was a friend indeed. Even though the Snow Maidens were usually cold and aloof, they possessed a bright and sincere heart. As long as they believed that something was right, they would do it with even more determination than normal living beings. By the way, Su Jingxiang asked me to leave this for you. Yanhua brought out a pink ice flower from her storage ring. She told me to place this in front of your grave when the 4-9 Immortal sect erects a tombstone for you. It looks like I can give it to you now. And Lin accepted the ice flower from Yanhua's hands. It had a total of 6 glittering and translucent petals that shimmered with a pink hue under the sunlight. It was extremely beautiful, as if it were the most intricate artwork. Furthermore, even though it was ice to the touch, it gave off a peculiar sense of warmth, as if it had warmed both his body and mind. So beautiful. And Lin couldn't help but praise before turning to Yanhua. "Where is Su Jingxiang?" "Dead," Yanhua replied. And Lin's hand trembled slightly as he held the pink ice flower. After a long silence, he put the ice flower away into his storage ring. "She died 30 years ago. Before she died, she asked me to leave this treasure for you. She said that she wanted to thank you for saving her life a few times. Now this is all she can do. I hope you don't mind," Yanhua said slowly as she looked at the clouds in the sky. And Lin couldn't help but heave a forlorn sigh as he thought back to the Snow Maiden with a gentle smile on her face. He had saved her in the ancient Taichu realm, and he couldn't help but heave a light sigh. It was like this. Suddenly, the people around you would disappear. Fortunately, his closest friends were all safe and sound. "Right, who killed Su Jingxiang?" And Lin asked. "It was a Heaven Pioneer Realm Marshal," Yanhua said. "He died in the battle just now." And Lin, "All right, I've already gotten my revenge." And Lin's injuries weren't serious. With the help of the Immortal Pill and the Evergreen Technique, he quickly recovered and replenished his strength. Zhu Shuza and Situ Feng were still recovering from their injuries. Little Huang was lying lazily off to the side and swallowed a Yang-type Immortal Pill to recover his energy. However, Su Xiaolan, the Celestial Arch, Tina, Bai Ling, and the others were nowhere to be seen. "Goodbye, where did Xiaolan and the others go?" And Lin asked. He had just been meditating to recover, so he didn't pay much attention to his surroundings. Dabai opened his eyes and yawned. "I think they said that there was some trash in Qiuguang City that needed to be cleaned up, so they went over there." And Lin nodded. "Cleaning up trash. That must have been a tough job for them." Qiuguang City. Blood and flames spread throughout the #1 city in the Gem State. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army had already massacred all of the living beings in the city. The Heavenly Humans released holy white light from their bodies as they scanned the entire city. They were checking to see if there were any fish that had escaped the net, not letting go of any hidden places. All of the Blood Tribe living beings were licking the corpses of the dead humans with excitement, sucking the blood from their bodies dry. Meanwhile, the Void Spirit Tribe soldiers floated through the air like ghosts and sang, as if they were celebrating. "Great General, the third search has been completed. All of the humans have been killed." A soul-piercing stage general flew through the air and reported to the only Great General before him with a respectful expression. The handsome Great General nodded with a satisfied expression. "Let's head to Nanchao City now. They must have already conquered the city, so we can do whatever we want now." All of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army soldiers were reinvigorated upon hearing this. In particular, the Blood Tribe soldiers had already begun to cheer. "Let's go and start the next feast." The Heavenly Human Tribe Great General's voice reverberated through the air above Qiuguang City. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army roared in unison with battle intent surging from their bodies. "Go! You've killed my people. Die with them." A voice filled with boundless might erupted from the sky above, followed by an extremely terrifying might. Boom! All of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army felt as if they were being crushed by an extremely powerful force. It was as if the boundless wrath of the heavens had descended upon them. "Who is it?" The Heavenly Human Tribe Great General looked up into the sky with an extremely grave expression. At this moment, a figure appeared before the Great General from over 500 kilometers away. The figure opened his palm and gripped tightly onto the Great General's head. A pillar of white light pierced through heaven and earth, tearing through the heavens. The Heavenly Human Tribe Great General's body crumbled amid a blood-curdling wail before being pulverized into the tiniest particles. "Who am I?" The man looked up at the empty space before him. "I'm the janitor of the Kingdom of the 9 States, and I'm responsible for cleaning up trash from the Kingdom of the 9 States." The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army stared blankly at the man in the sky, and their minds had gone completely blank. Those were Tao integration stage great generals at full power. How had he been insta-killed by that mysterious man? How was this possible? Just how terrifyingly powerful did this man have to be? Right at this moment, a tall and slender beauty in a flowing white dress also appeared in the sky before tossing a ball of light through the air. The ball of light expanded, creating an independent space with a radius of over 250 kilometers, thereby trapping the heavenly human tribe united army within it. They're so close to each other. I'll be able to kill them all at once. It was also at this moment that the white holy flame vermilion bird descended from the sky, creating a sea of scorching flames on the ground below. Tens of thousands of blood tribe cultivators were reduced to wisps of smoke amid blood-curdling wails. A pristine, regal, and peerlessly proud figure appeared before everyone's eyes. That woman is the divine Phoenix Maiden. My God, why is the divine Phoenix Maiden here? All of the blood tribe powerful beings let loose cries of horror as horror welled up in their hearts. The heavenly human tribe great general was already dead, so how could there be any Tao integration stage super mighty figures here? I'm here to clean up trash as well. The woman in the jade dress spoke in an indifferent voice as her dragon sparrow sword slashed through the air. Countless heavenly human tribe, void spirit tribe, and blood tribe powerful beings were slain by her sword, and Xiaoguang City was transformed into a purgatory again. It was still a massacre. However, this time, it was the heavenly human tribe united army of 8 million that had been massacred. On this day, the heavenly human tribe united army that was attacking the southern region of the Kingdom of the Nine States was completely annihilated. Chapter 1520. When Enlin saw Su Xiaolan again, Zhu Shuza and Situ Feng had already mostly recovered from their injuries. Su Xiaolan told him that the heavenly human tribe united army in Xiaoguang City had been completely annihilated, as well as the heavenly human tribe united army that had attacked the Kingdom of the Nine States. Enlin was quite elated to hear this. The heavenly human tribe had slaughtered so many of their brethren, so they deserved to suffer such a fate. We can't let our guard down in the southern region of the Kingdom of the Nine States. Emperor Changsheng will stay here, and I'll go with the extermination team from the 4-9 Immortal Sect, the Celestial Arch instructed. Emperor Changsheng nodded and began to organize the defenses around Nanchao City. The Celestial Arch turned to Enlin. The extermination team doesn't sound very intimidating. How about the Heaven Extermination Team, or the God-Slaying Team? Enlin shook his head in a meaningful and heartfelt manner. Don't be so high-profile. We're just ordinary cultivators, so why would we need such an intimidating name? It's not a good idea to flex too much. The Celestial Arch, anyone could say that he wasn't a good flexer, and he could accept that. However, if Enlin said that he wasn't a good flexer, he really wanted to slap him across the face. This was not something a flexer could say. It was also at this moment that Emperor Changsheng's voice transmission talisman lit up again. This time, it was an emergency report from the Eastern Front of the Kingdom of the Nine States. A massive battle had also erupted on the Eastern Front of the Kingdom of the Nine States. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army had been mobilized in full force to fight to the death. The Kingdom of the Nine States United Army was already struggling to hold on and was requesting reinforcements. Everyone fell silent upon hearing this. Could it be that the fleeing Void Spirit Tribe mighty figure at the return to Void Pinnacle stage tipped off the Heavenly Human Tribe to our whereabouts? Emperor Changsheng speculated. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army's Eastern Front had suddenly launched a massive attack. No, it can't be him, Enlin said with conviction. Dead people couldn't talk. A return to Void stage mighty figure, like him, wanted to escape from the Kingdom of the Nine States? Perhaps Emperor Yi Ding tipped them off, or perhaps the Heavenly Human Tribe sensed that something was amiss and decided to end the battle as quickly as possible, Su Xiaolan speculated. That made some sense. So the question was, should they continue to advance south or reinforce the Eastern Front? If they didn't advance toward the south and allow the heavenly human tribe on the southern front time to recover, their chances of annihilating the heavenly human tribe on the southern front would be greatly reduced. If they continued to advance and the eastern front was lost, the people would be plunged into misery and suffering. Zhu Shuza suddenly stood up and asked, "I'll go with the Supreme Elder. You guys can continue forward. Is that okay?" And Lin was taken aback for a moment. Then he nodded and said with a smile, "Of course." Although the extermination team was a little weaker, there was still hope for them to succeed. Moreover, they still had a trump card. 2 Dao integration stage super mighty figures and a dozen or so return to void stage mighty figures in relatively good condition should be able to hold on for a while. Suddenly, Emperor Changsheng's transmission glyph lit up again. This time, the heavenly human tribe on the northern front of the Kingdom of the Nine States discovered that something was amiss, and after retreating for a short distance, they began to launch a massive attack again. Even the great Empress of the Snow Maidens couldn't stop them. "And Lin, let me go." The Starfire battleship is very adept at defending large battles, so it should be able to hold on until you guys return. Thus, the Starfire battleship departed from the extermination team. The situation was dire. The 3 groups sprang into action at the same time. Speed was paramount in war. The extermination team had to destroy the heavenly human tribe on the southern front as quickly as possible. The phoenix rose into the sky. On Lin, the celestial arch, Su Xiaolan, Bai Ling, Tina, Yi Ling, Xiao Hong, and the others all stood on the phoenix's back and flew toward the Spirit Lake realm in the southwestern region of the Kingdom of the Nine States. The Spirit Lake realm was located in the southern part of the Tai Chu continent, to the southwest of the Dark Marshlands, and to the north of the southern Heavenly Wing Nation. It wasn't a very large place, only about a third of the size of the Kingdom of the Nine States. It wasn't very large, but it was situated in an extremely good location. Vital energy was abundant here, and there were countless treasures and mystic realms all over the place. It could be said that it was one of the most blessed lands on the entire Tai Chu continent. Aside from the Snake Spirit tribe, which was one of the 10 Realm Guardian tribes, there were also all types of demon tribes living in the Spirit Lake realm. This was all thanks to the fact that the leader of all demons, Nuwa, was extremely tolerant and allowed other demon tribes to live in the Spirit Lake realm. Now, the Snake Spirit tribe was supporting the human race and fighting to protect the Kingdom of the Nine States. All of the demon tribes now had a common enemy, which was the heavenly human tribe. The Snake Spirit tribe was the leader of the Spirit Lake realm, and it had to face the combined attacks of the heavenly human tribe, the Void Spirit tribe, and the Blood tribe. If it weren't for the fact that the heavenly human tribe united army had focused their attack on the Kingdom of the Nine States, the Snake Spirit tribe would most likely be in grave danger. Even so, the battle was still extremely intense, and the front line was slowly being pushed back into the Spirit Lake realm. The phoenix flew through the air, and Lin stood on the phoenix's back and looked down at the Spirit Lake realm down below. The Spirit Lake realm really did have lakes, and there were quite a few of them. There were lakes of different sizes on the ground, and they took up almost a third of the entire continent. Many of the lakes were as clear as mirrors, and they weren't independent of one another. Each and every one of the lakes was connected by at least one water channel, thereby creating a massive water system. There were many boats and cities on the lakes, creating quite a spectacular sight to behold. Not only that, but the Spirit Lake realm also had some very special lakes. For example, the Spirit Lake had a rose-colored water, the Flame Lake that was boiling fiery red, the Poison Lake that was emitting green smoke, the Black Lake that was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. For special lakes like these, there were naturally no waterways that connected them. A faint smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face as she looked down at the vast expanse of lakes. I've heard that the Spirit Lake realm has the best hot springs on the entire continent. I really want to go there, and Lin's eyes lit up. I'll take you there after this battle. A faint blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's face as she nodded. All right, don't fall for his tricks, big sister Su Xiaolan. I can see giant and Lin's malicious intent in his eyes. Tina flew onto Su Xiaolan's shoulder with a cautious expression. Air. Su Xiaolan faltered slightly upon hearing this. Wasn't she just trying to fall for his tricks? And Lin glowered at Tina with a hint of resentment in his eyes. Tina stuck out her little tongue at him with an expression that said, I'm not going to let you get away with your tricks. Within the geothermal lake of the Spirit Lake realm, a massive octopus monster over 10,000 feet in size was taking a leisurely bath in the lake, and it was rubbing its body with a towel wrapped around its tentacles. The situation on the front lines was quite dire, but the general guard in the lake was still very calm. As long as the heavenly human tribe didn't attack this place, it would be safe. All of a sudden, the octopus monster was struck by an indescribably terrifying aura. Its entire body began to tremble, as if it were a low-rank creature encountering an extremely high-rank being, and it instinctively felt fear and submission. There seemed to be a ball of flames flying through the sky at an extremely fast speed, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Was I hallucinating? The octopus monster murmured to itself, feeling like it was overthinking things. A few seconds later, a terrifying wind pressure descended from the sky, sweeping up massive waves on the octopus monster's face. The octopus monster looked up into the sky with a dumbstruck expression. What kind of deity is this? Chapter 1521. Within the Spirit Lake realm. Heavenly Snake Lightning Lake. The lake was like a heavenly snake that stretched for over 1,500 kilometers. Countless bolts of lightning surged within the lake, exuding terrifying lightning might. This was a super large lake on the southern border of the Spirit Lake realm. It was a natural barrier that kept the outside world at bay. Now, the flames of war had already spread to the heavenly snake lightning lake. The lake water churned and roared as energy clashes rocked heaven and earth. The army of over 10 million was engaged in a fierce battle against the heavenly human tribe, united army of over 15 million. Sharp blades, poisonous fog, lightning, heavenly fire, holy light, and many different kinds of energy collided and intersected, turning this magnificent lake upside down. The army of the Spirit Lake realm had the geographical advantage. On the other side was the heavenly human tribe united army. One blood tribe boat after another was capsized by the lightning-type monsters living in the heavenly snake lightning lake. The void spirit tribe cultivators were afraid of lightning, and those with low cultivation bases could only yell and sing on the other side of the lake, but they didn't dare to cross the lake. The heavenly human tribe united army posed the greatest threat to the Spirit Lake realm. They were proficient in all types of combination spell formations that could keep lightning at bay, and they could also fly through the air. There were tens of thousands of massive black flowers swaying in front of the Spirit Lake realm army. The massive flower buds contracted slightly before abruptly erupting into the air. A series of energy cannons imbued with extremely terrifying toxins were capable of swatting down the heavenly human tribe united army like mosquitoes. They were the black poison demonic flower tribe of the Spirit Lake realm. They had emerged from the soil of the Black Poison Lake and obtained Tao after being infected by the poison for 100 years. A series of green humanoid demons with bodies as thin as bamboo poles, arms as sharp as sickles, and forelegs sat atop the majestic rhinoceros demons. As they charged forward again and again, they reaped the lives of the blood tribe members that surged onto the shore. The Snake Spirit tribe didn't have a large population. There were only about 1 million of them among the army of over 10 million. However, they were the most powerful force in the army. The Snake people formed battle formations and unleashed all types of peculiar spell techniques to tear their enemies apart. Some of them would die by being pierced through the heart by countless arrows. Some would kill with poison. Some would extract life force. And some would use all types of 5 elemental traps. In any case, they were all extremely cruel and vicious. If they could torture their enemies, they definitely wouldn't give them a comfortable death. It was this fighting style that suppressed the enemy's momentum to a certain extent. In the sky, golden energy and blue energy collided. Every time they collided, the sky within 100 miles would shake to the point where it was on the verge of shattering. Two Tao integration stage, super mighty figures were battling in the air above, and each and every one of their attacks was capable of destroying heaven and earth. A peerlessly beautiful serpentine woman with jet-black waist-length hair was in battle with the world creation evil vanquisher divine artifact in hand, and every single slash was capable of emanating boundless golden divine radiance. She was none other than the supreme commander of the Spirit Lake Realm United Army, Black Spirit Snake. There was a humanoid skeleton across from Black Spirit Snake. Its entire body was crystal clear and glowed with a deep blue luster. Its head was especially large, completely disproportionate to its body. The skull took up almost half of its body, looking somewhat comical. Its appearance was very unique, but no one dared to laugh at it. This was because it was a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure of the Void Spirit Realm. Furthermore, it was one of the most powerful, super mighty figures of the Void Spirit Realm, and its power was extremely terrifying. Even children across the entire continent would be scared to tears upon hearing its name. If someone knew what it had done in the past, they probably wouldn't even be able to laugh. The god-engulfing skeleton could slaughter an entire tribe with a smile, and it could engulf gods with a fit of rage. Its lower jaw was slightly curled up, as if it was smiling. It wielded a crimson scythe in one hand and a black bead in the other, and it was battling Black Spirit Snake relentlessly, showing no signs of being at a disadvantage. On the entire Taichu continent, there were only a handful of super mighty figures below the God of Creation stage who could match Black Spirit Snake in battle, and the god engulfing skeleton was one of them. It was also the most powerful enemy of the Spirit Lake realm. Aside from it, there was also a primordial divine monster battling a man from the Snake Spirit clan. Both of them were Tao integration stage super mighty figures. The primordial ancient monster god had the body of an Easter dragon. Below its body were 8 horse legs that stepped on fiery clouds. At its neck, there were 100 water, snake-like necks. On each neck, there were different heads. Some had cow heads, some had sheep heads, some had human heads, some had snake heads, some had dragon heads, some had bird heads. Each and every one of these heads could unleash an extremely unique spell technique. When all of these spell techniques were perfectly combined, they would be able to unleash extremely terrifying power. The Tao integration stage man from the Snake Spirit clan was beginning to fall into a disadvantageous position due to the countless spell techniques being unleashed, and he could only hold on with great difficulty. Powerful beings from the heavenly human tribe had also descended. 6 Heaven Pioneer stage great generals swept over the entire heavenly snake lightning lake. Among the Spirit Lake United Army, there was only one beautiful woman with a white snake tail who was able to face the great generals head-on. Over a dozen years ago, she had once been renowned across the entire continent. Some people said that she was a new Tao integration stage super mighty figure. Some said that she was the white snake empress who had once fallen but had now come back to life. However, she referred to herself as White Spirit Snake in a very simple and plain manner. White Spirit Snake wielded her yin and yang dual swords, and her white dress fluttered in the air, making her appear as if she were a goddess dancing in the air. She wielded her sword, and her sword lit up heaven and earth. If the 6 Heaven Pioneer stage great generals were to join forces, their combined power would be comparable to that of 2 veteran Tao integration stage super mighty figures. Now that they had unleashed all of their attacks, all of them had been kept at bay by White Spirit Snake. In the sky above, the battle between the most powerful beings was still raging. On the ground below, the Spirit Lake United Army was beginning to show signs of defeat. As more and more Heavenly Human Tribe United Army soldiers crossed over the Heavenly Snake Lightning Lake, the pressure on the Spirit Lake United Army began to mount. After all, their enemy outnumbered them by 5 million, and the Spirit Lake Army was quickly reduced to 8 million. However, there were still over 11 million Heavenly Human Tribe United Army soldiers left. If things continued like this, the entire Spirit Lake United Army was going to be wiped out by the fearless Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. Black Spirit Snake was currently engaged in a fierce battle with the god engulfing skeleton and had no time to help. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted. Red energy exploded in the sky, surging for several hundred kilometers. A humanoid man enveloped in golden flames fell from the sky. His blood splattered across the sky. There was a circular hole in his chest from which extremely terrifying energy was still wreaking havoc. Golden Sun, Snake Emperor. White Spirit Snake's heart jolted upon seeing this. The Golden Sun Snake Emperor was a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure of the Snake Spirit clan, and his defeat had a massive impact on the course of this battle. Ha ha! Die! A primordial divine monster with 100 different heads pounced toward the Golden Sun Snake Emperor with a sinister smile on its face. Each and every one of its mouths was imbued with a different type of power of the divine Tao, creating an extremely terrifying sight to behold. Chapter 1522. The Golden Sun Snake Emperor plummeted from the sky. A gargantuan creature followed closely behind him, and over 100 of its heads opened their cavernous mouths as a terrifying power of the divine Tao quickly converged and was about to be released at the same time. If the Golden Sun Snake Emperor were to take this attack head-on, he would most likely be crippled, if not dead. It's been a long time since I've devoured a Tao integration stage mighty figure. I'm really looking forward to it. Gulu. Ba ba ba. Meow. Different sounds appeared from the primordial ancient demon god's body at the same time, expressing the same meaning. Happiness. Don't you dare get cocky, filthy beast. Black Spirit Snake's brows furrowed as she slashed her realm creation evil vanquishing sword toward the ancient divine monster. The golden sword radiance brought with it an absolute suppressive force, splitting the sky as it descended from the sky. The divine monster was completely caught off guard by Black Spirit Snake's sudden attack, and it was unable to evade in time, upon which a massive gash was inflicted upon its scaly body. Blood gushed forth from the gash as its skin was lacerated. Roar! The primordial ancient monster god howled in pain as his spell was forcibly interrupted. However, at this moment, a blue skeleton had already appeared before Black Spirit Snake, and the crimson scythe in its right hand fell upon her. Black Spirit Snake hurriedly retreated to defend the Golden Sun Snake Emperor, and it was also at this moment that bursts of peculiar energy fluctuations suddenly erupted from the black bead in the god engulfing skeleton's left hand. Black Spirit Snake's expression became a little dazed, as if her mind had been affected. Bang! Sparks flew everywhere. The divine sword was sliced open by the crimson scythe, and a gaping wound appeared on Black Spirit Snake's body at lightning speed. Black Spirit Snake hurtled back in retreat, but the god engulfing skeleton was becoming more and more ferocious. Ha ha! Well done, 100-head divine monster. Defeating the Golden Sun Snake Emperor is nowhere near as important as killing Black Spirit Snake. You've created a great opportunity for me. The god engulfing skeleton laughed heartily as it slashed its scythe through the air in its hand. The 100-head divine monster had finally gained the upper hand, only to be severely wounded by Black Spirit Snake and have *its spell technique disrupted. Now, its body was being blasted by the Golden Sun Snake Emperor's great golden holy flame, so it only had one F*King retort left. Sister. White Spirit Snake was also starting to get nervous upon seeing that Black Spirit Snake was on a back foot. However, she knew that this was not the time to be distracted. Dealing with 6 Heaven Enlightenment Realm Marshals at the same time did not allow for a moment of distraction. Black Spirit Snake, today is the day of your death. The god engulfing skeleton had never slain such a powerful enemy before. Dark blue flames began to appear in its empty eye sockets as it became more and more excited. Black Spirit Snake's expression darkened, and she charged forward in the face of the oncoming crimson scythe. The god engulfing skeleton's expression shifted, but its crimson scythe continued to fall. It refused to believe that Black Spirit Snake wouldn't dodge. A ferocious expression appeared on Black Spirit Snake's face as the scythe was about to strike her neck. She stabbed her realm creation, evil, vanquishing sword through the air, upon which a golden sword intent erupted forth for over 150 kilometers. The god-engulfing skeleton let loose a wail of anguish as the sword projection struck its chest. Its Tao body, which had been tempered for tens of thousands of years, was cracked by the sword projection, and its body was knocked back tens of thousands of meters. At this moment, a line had already appeared on Black Spirit Snake's neck, from which blood was seeping out. Just a little bit more. An enviable smile appeared on Black Spirit Snake's face. "Madman, are you *King crazy? Your head was almost detached from your body, and you still dare to fight me with your life on the line." The god-engulfing skeleton's expression twisted with rage. Black Spirit Snake didn't reply. Instead, she continued to attack the god-engulfing skeleton with a cold smile on her face. Due to Black Spirit Snake's desperate attack, the battle between the two sides became even more intense. Right at this moment, one of the heavenly human tribe great generals who was attacking White Spirit Snake suddenly looked up into the sky with furrowed brows. "Something's not right. What's wrong?" another great general asked. "I can't contact all of the great generals who went to attack the kingdom of the 9 states. Another great general replied with furrowed brows. "This could be because the battle was too intense, and they didn't have time to contact me." At this moment, a series of sword strikes instantly forced back the 6 great generals. White Spirit Snake flew through the air toward one of the great generals. "Our battle was so intense, and we even had time to talk to each other, so there's no reason why they couldn't even contact me," a great general said as he helped his teammates restrict White Spirit Snake. Unless they're all dead." All of the great generals' hearts jolted with shock upon hearing this. They didn't dare to believe this, but it seemed to be the most plausible explanation. After all, after eliminating all of the impossibilities, there was only one explanation left, no matter how implausible it was. Let's wait a bit longer. If we still can't contact them, right at this moment, the god-engulfing skeleton's voice transmission talisman lit up. However, the god-engulfing skeleton's opponent was Black Spirit Snake, so it didn't have a chance to pick up the voice transmission talisman. If it wasted even a tenth of a second, it would most likely be sliced into shreds by the divine sword. After a short while, the god-engulfing skeleton's voice transmission talisman dimmed, but the 100-head divine monster's voice transmission talisman lit up. The 100-head divine monster had just been severely wounded by Black Spirit Snake's sword. It was now being attacked by the Golden Sun Snake Emperor in a frenzy. It was in a state of panic, and it had no time to pick up the voice transmission talisman. Thus, the battle continued to rage on. Another half an hour passed. All of the heavenly human tribe, great generals, were finally unable to remain calm. It could be said that the heavenly human tribe united army had unleashed a crushing force upon the kingdom of the 9 states. If everything had gone smoothly, it wouldn't have been surprising if all of the kingdom of the 9 states united army troops on the southern front had been wiped out. There was no way that they wouldn't even be able to establish communication. "Should we retreat?" a great general asked. A white-haired great general looked on at the army that had just crossed the heavenly snake lightning lake with indignation on his face, but he still took a deep breath before yelling in a loud voice, "Retreat." The retreat song erupted throughout heaven and earth. All of the heavenly human tribe united army was dumbstruck. They clearly had the upper hand, so why were they retreating? Not only were the Blood Tribe and Void Spirit Tribe confused, but even the heavenly human tribe powerful beings were also struck by the absurdity of this situation. All of them turned toward the great generals in the sky above. The god-engulfing skeleton let loose a torrent of abuse. "What the *CK are they doing? Why are they retreating? Are they messing with us?" If it weren't for the fact that the heavenly human tribe represented the heavens, it really wanted to swallow all of them. The situation has changed. The heavenly human tribe united army has encountered a mishap, so we have to be cautious, the heavenly human tribe great general explained. His voice was imbued with divine might, striking fear into everyone's hearts. However, the Tao integration stage super mighty figures didn't fall for this. The 100-head divine monster rolled its eyes, and the god-engulfing skeleton flared up with rage. However, most of the living beings still did as they were told. The Heavenly Human Tribe Great General had absolute authority over the entire Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army had finally crossed the Lightning River, but now they were going to have to go back and endure another trial of life and death. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army began to retreat. The Spirit Lake Realm United Army was completely dumbfounded. It seemed like they were the ones at a disadvantage. However, after a brief moment of confusion, they began to roar with excitement. Charge! Don't let them get away. All those who invade our Spirit Lake Realm must be killed without mercy. The Spirit Lake Realm United Army suddenly became very excited, and they began to pummel the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army while they were down. Chapter 15:23. The tides of the battle were suddenly turned. The invincible Heavenly Human Tribe United Army was reduced to a pitiful state by the sudden order to retreat. They retreated as they fought, and their casualties continued to mount. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army was reduced to less than 10 million. A bald man wearing a white cape, red gloves, and a yellow tracksuit charged through the Blood Tribe Army like a ferocious beast. Each of his fists was capable of pulverizing an area within a radius of several dozen kilometers. No matter how powerful the Blood Tribe powerful beings were, they wouldn't be able to survive if their bodies were pulverized. This bald man charged into the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army in an invincible manner. All of his opponents were killed with a single punch, and his name struck fear into the hearts of all of the powerful beings present. Run! The crazy bald man is coming again. A Void Spirit Tribe powerful being screamed. After slaughtering his way through the Blood Tribe Army, the bald man finally pounced toward the Void Spirit Tribe powerful beings in the distance. Die! Boundless killing intense surge in the bald man's eyes, and his fist crashed down, creating an earth-shattering boom as it crashed forward like a cannonball, creating a path of death that continued onward. Right at this moment, a blue figure appeared before him like a wraith-like figure. Her body was semi-transparent, and she wore a blue robe. Her figure was slender and graceful, and her skin was fair with a hint of black to it. Only her eyes glowed with a black light, and she crossed her arms in a circle, upon which a deep blue ripple-like energy appeared, exuding a frosty aura of the divine Tao. Frost Spirit, Death Cave Seal. Her voice was ethereal and very ethereal. The bald man's fist crashed into the blue figure's encirclement. The terrifying power was quickly dispelled, as if it had been thrown into the ocean. The woman's body drifted backward for several hundred meters before completely nullifying the power of the fist. The bald man's eyebrows perked up. Void Spirit Tribe, Frost Dress Woman. The woman didn't say anything. She merely bent over, and her ethereal laughter reverberated through the air. Boom! A cloud of black mist fell from the sky, engulfing the earth within a radius of 5 kilometers. Gulyalu! Gulyalu! A sense of suffocation suddenly engulfed heaven and earth. A 6-legged monster began to appear. It was hundreds of meters long, and its entire body was twisted and dark. Countless white skulls swelled up on its thick head, and each skull seemed to be smiling. Void Spirit Tribe, Depraved Bone Demon, the bald man said in an indifferent voice. As soon as he finished speaking, the ground beneath his feet suddenly undulated like waves. Then, it slowly turned pitch black. Extremely distorted emotions began to envelop his entire body, crazily attacking him. The ground turned black, like a black rectangle. Then, on the ground in front of the bald man, densely packed eyes slowly opened and stared at the man. They seemed to be laughing, as if they were proud, as if they were trying to seduce him into depravity. Void Spirit Tribe, Absolute Evil Nightmare. The bald man continued to speak, his expression extremely solemn. He. Demonic Fist Sage, the #1 return to Void Stage mighty figure under Nua's command. Even if we retreat after killing you, we'll still be able to reap some rewards. The sinister nightmare demon chuckled coldly. The bald man couldn't help but laugh. Kill me? With just the 3 of you? At this moment, The depraved bone demon had already pounced toward the fist sage like a bolt of black lightning. The fist sage was just about to evade when he discovered that his legs had been bound by an extremely terrifying suction force, thereby rendering him unable to move for a short time. Bam! The fist collided with the black lightning. Shock waves instantly tore through the ground within a radius of over 50 kilometers. The fist sage's arm trembled and twisted, and even his bones began to crackle. Thankfully, he was still able to knock the depraved bone demon flying in the end. Promise me that you won't lick my feet all the time. The fist sage's other fist was just about to fall upon the sinister nightmare demon when a bone-chilling sensation suddenly erupted from behind him. The woman in blue had already appeared behind him, and she placed her hands on his shoulders gently. A cool breeze blew past, as if a lover were gently blowing into his ears, and his entire body became numb and numb. It was also in that instant that the fist sage fell into a daze. A black shadow suddenly extended from the sinister nightmare demon. This shadow was extremely sharp, and not only was it extremely powerful, but it also possessed an extremely powerful consciousness that could instantly annihilate or return to void stage mighty figure's consciousness. Crap! The fist sage didn't have time to evade. His chest was torn apart by the black shadow. Are the three mighty figures at the return to void pinnacle stage of the void spirit tribe not enough to take care of the fist sage? The sinister nightmare demon cackled as the power of the divine Tao surged on the inky black ground below. The fist sage held a very high status in the spirit beast tribe united army, so killing him would be a relief to them. The god engulfing skeleton had clearly also noticed this, and it chortled with glee. Nice! Frost dress woman, depraved bone demon, sinister nightmare demon. As expected of the most exceptional return to void stage mighty figures of our void spirit tribe. I really admire this ambush. Many living beings had also noticed the fist sage's predicament. All of the powerful beings of the spirit beast tribe united army yelled as they charged toward the fist sage in an attempt to provide reinforcements. However, all of their vitality was quickly stripped away as soon as they stepped within a radius of 15 kilometers from the sinister nightmare demon. At the same time, they went insane. Some of them howled with rage, some of them attempted suicide, and some of them even swung their sabers toward their comrades. No matter how many pieces of trash there are, they're still trash. Fist sage, you must die today. A thick bone spike suddenly appeared on the depraved bone demon's head as it pounced toward the fist sage. The bone spike pierced through space like a spear. The fist sage had only just blasted the frost dress woman away when the depraved bone demon's attack was already upon him. All of the spirit beast tribe united army cultivators couldn't bear to watch any longer. They didn't want to witness the fist sage being stabbed to death. Chirp! The cry of a phoenix erupted from the heavens above. Before all of the living beings had a chance to react, all of a sudden, a divine flame pierced through heaven and earth, tearing through space. Boom! The divine flame suddenly exploded beside the fist sage as the blood-curdling cries of the depraved bone demon and the sinister nightmare demon erupted. An aura that struck fear into everyone's heart surged forth like a tidal wave. This was absolute bloodline suppression, absolute power suppression. A gorgeous living being that drew praise from all who looked upon it had appeared in this world. The fist sage's eyes widened with incredulity. Phoenix. That's right, there was a phoenix over 1,000 feet in length standing before him. One of its claws had pierced into the depraved bone demon's body, while the other was pinned firmly against the sinister nightmare demon's body. Why is the phoenix here? The god engulfing skeleton's expression shifted upon seeing this. If the phoenix was here, then didn't that mean there was a very good chance that the divine phoenix maiden was here as well? There was no living being on the entire Tai Chu continent who dared to ignore the divine phoenix maiden. The god engulfing skeleton had only just thought of this when it discovered that two people had appeared beside it. One of them wore a jade dress, while the other wore a snowy white dress. A man and a woman had barged into its battlefield for no reason at all, and their killing intent erupted like a tsunami. The way he looked at it was clearly the way one would look when one's eyes turned red when they saw their enemy. Chapter 1524. The god engulfing skeleton had no idea how it had managed to provoke these two. Theoretically speaking, this was the first time it had encountered the divine Phoenix Maiden. However, neither of them were disguising the killing intent in their hearts. The divine Phoenix Maiden's killing intent was very pure, as if there was a deep vendetta between them. As for the familiar-looking man, his killing intent was mixed with some other emotions, which was most likely indirect hatred. The god engulfing skeleton was extremely well-versed in emotions, and it was sure that these two's killing intent definitely wasn't due to the fact that it had slaughtered a whole bunch of spirit beasts. There had to be something else going on between them. Black Spirit Snake didn't turn to look at Su Xiaolan. Instead, she turned to Enlin with astonishment and incredulity in her eyes. "You're not dead. I live as long as the heavens and as glorious as the sun and moon. How could I die?" Enlin shot a glance at Black Spirit Snake. Black Spirit Snake. "Hi, Senior Enlin." An excited yell erupted from the distance. Enlin turned to discover an extremely delicate woman looking at him with excitement in her eyes. She was battling 6 Heaven Pioneer stage great generals, but she still had the time to greet him, White Spirit Snake. Enlin was a little dazed. He had always thought that White Spirit Snake was a hack, but now he realized that he had underestimated her. White Spirit Snake had also reached the Tao integration stage, and from the energy fluctuations emanating from her body, it appeared that she was even more powerful than Su Xiaolan. This was no longer something that could be explained with a hack. All of the spirit beasts were given a fright by White Spirit Snake's words. Empress White Snake is referring to that man as Senior? My God, did I hear that right? Am I living in a dream? White Spirit Snake was already one of the most powerful beings in the Spirit Beast tribe. Just how powerful was the man she was referring to as Senior? Wait, why does the name Enlin sound a little familiar? At this moment, the Divine Phoenix Maiden and the Divine Phoenix Maiden had already descended into complete chaos. The Spirit Beast United Army was ecstatic, while the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army was horrified. Why were these two gods of slaughter in the northern region of the Kingdom of the 9 States suddenly here? Were they going to abandon the northern front of the Kingdom of the 9 States? At this moment, the Phoenix was looking at the Fist Saint with arrogance and disdain. Before he could express his gratitude, he saw several figures jump down from the Phoenix's back. Ah, isn't this the bald man we saw in the tomb of celestial immortal Shou Yang? A soft voice sounded, and it was extremely alluring. Yes, it's him. I didn't think we would meet here. How nostalgic. A clear voice sounded. Wow, the One-Punch Man that Master mentioned before? The girl's voice was clear and lively. The Fist Saint raised his head and looked over. There was a person in a blue palace dress, elegant and beautiful. One of them was dressed in a white robe with golden edges. He had an imposing appearance. One of them was dressed in tight black clothes, revealing her perfect curves. She was charming and charming. He was very familiar with 2 of them. He seemed to have beaten them up in that world. The Fist Saint's lips twitched, but he still extended a grateful salute. "Thank you for your help, fellow cultivator." Xian Yuan Chung shook his head. "We should be the ones thanking you. It's all thanks to you that the Kingdom of the 9 States is able to hold on until now." The man's words were extremely sincere, and even the Fist Saint felt a sense of relief. Ow! Material sacrifice. The sinister nightmare monster's body suddenly dissipated, and it transformed into an insubstantial spirit body before fleeing into the distance. However, it was also at this moment that ripples appeared in the air. A flash of blue light, like a crescent moon or a saber, appeared out of thin air before instantly slashing toward the sinister nightmare monster's body with lethal force. Wherever it passed, the air was expelled and the void was dislocated. The abominable nightmare monster did not expect the other party to be prepared. Caught off guard, its body was sliced in half. A blood-curdling wail erupted between heaven and earth. Its body did not dissipate after being sliced in half. Instead, it continued to flee for its life. Xian Yuancheng's expression remained unchanged as he snapped his fingers. "Pa!" The sinister nightmare monster suddenly discovered that boundless light and energy had erupted in the air around it. No! A sense of peril welled up in its heart. Boom! The air exploded with boundless power. A ferocious mushroom cloud rose up from the ground as destructive energy proliferated for over 50 kilometers. The fist same was caught off guard and was almost blasted flying by the explosion. He was astonished to see just what this man had been through. Why was his cultivation completely different from when he was battling? Its true nuclear, celestial, immortal. At this moment, some of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army soldiers were already yelling in shock and horror. When Su Qianyun had first unleashed her power, not many people had recognized her as the setting moon's celestial immortal. However, everyone immediately came to their senses as soon as Xian Yuancheng unleashed his power. True nuclear celestial immortal Xian Yuancheng was the only mighty figure on the entire continent who could cause such a terrifying explosion to erupt in the air. At the same time, the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army began to flee even faster. Among all the return to void stage mighty figures present, true nuclear celestial immortal would definitely rank among the most feared. To some of the weaker living beings, a terrifying explosion with a massive area of effect was a nightmare, a disaster, and an AoE attack. Before the energy of the explosion had even dissipated, a black figure riddled with wounds had already charged out. The sinister nightmare monster was still alive. However, before it had a chance to celebrate, a silvery white blade punctured its body, upon which destructive power surged forth in a frenzy to destroy its spirit body. The sinister nightmare monster wailed in anguish and struggled, but the sharp blade was like a parasite that wouldn't stop until it was dead. In the end, it quickly died amid a blood-curdling cry. The sinister nightmare monster that was renowned throughout the void spirit realm had been killed just like that. The silvery white dagger flew through the air in a sharp arc before disappearing into the young woman's sleeve. A faint smile appeared on the young woman's face as she looked up at the white-robed man in the sky with a smug expression. "Master, I took care of big guy." And Lin seemed to have sensed something, and he gave the young woman a thumbs up. A faint smile appeared on Yi Ling's face, and she began to make her way toward the depraved bone demon. The fist sage drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. Yi Ling wasn't just killing some random cat or dog. This was the renowned sinister nightmare monster of the void spirit realm. Was it really okay to be so nonchalant about it? He was becoming more and more unable to understand these rising stars. And Lin and the others were like this 100 years ago, and now his disciple Yi Ling was even more so. What kind of monsters were they? When the frost dress woman saw this, she immediately turned around and ran away without looking back. These people were far too terrifying, and she immediately gave up on the idea of saving the depraved bone demon. Big sister, Master said that trash can be cleaned up slowly. All return to void stage mighty figures won't be able to get away. A pleasant voice sounded. The frost dress woman was greeted by the sight of a little fairy standing in her way. A fairy at the return to void pinnacle stage? The frost dress woman continued onward without any fear on her face. She was also at the return to void pinnacle stage, so the fairy wouldn't be able to stop her. Chapter 1525. The frost dress woman was still charging forward. Time was of the essence here, and any delay could result in an irreversible disaster. As for the fairy in the distance, she didn't think she would be able to stop her. She was then greeted by the sight of Tina suddenly pulling out an ordinary-looking little ball from her storage ring before tossing it toward her. When the small ball flew over, it was very ordinary, as if it was a child playing around. It threw a ball at her in an extremely ordinary manner. A sense of caution welled up in the frost dress woman's heart. She was not the type to underestimate her opponent, and she was just about to unleash a movement technique to evade. However, it was also in that instant that the little ball suddenly sped up before splitting open from the middle, upon which boundless light erupted forth, as if a miniature sun had suddenly blossomed. The frost dress woman was struck by an unparalleled spatial gravitational force. She unleashed all of her power to defend herself, but all she could do in the end was let loose a shrill cry. The frost dress woman, who was renowned throughout the void spirit realm, was sucked into that ordinary-looking ball right before everyone's astonished eyes. The ball closed, and everything returned to normal. The little fairy stowed the ball away with a faint smile on her face. There's one more fairy in the Poke Ball now. I've always found this frost dress woman to be very fun. Hey, Tina smiled. She had the demeanor of a little she-devil. All of the enemy powerful beings shuddered at the sight of Tina. They couldn't help but feel like the pitiful frost dress woman was about to be subjected to some kind of torture. Oomph. I'm at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage. All Return to Void stage mighty figures are paper tigers in front of me. The little fairy stowed away the Pokeball with a proud expression before flying toward the phoenix. No one dared to doubt Tina's words. She was able to insta-kill the frost dress woman with a single strike, so all other Return to Void stage mighty figures were paper tigers in her eyes. Soon, the Depravity Bone Demon was also slain amid a blood-curdling wail. The 3 Void Spirit Tribe Return to Void stage mighty figures had finally been slain. This sudden turn of events dealt a heavy blow to the morale of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. The 3 Void Spirit Tribe Return to Void stage mighty figures were supposed to ambush the 5th Sage, but who would have thought that they would be slain instead? This was a devastating blow to the morale of the enemy army, second only to the death of a Tao Integration Stage mighty figure. Now that the God Engulfing Skeleton was surrounded by 3 Tao Integration Stage powerful beings, everyone was starting to get a little worried. Black Spirit Snake, the Divine Phoenix Maiden, and the Resurrected Enlin. That's right, all of the living beings finally recalled the man who had once shaken the entire continent. He was only at the Return to Void stage, but he had turned the entire Dark Marshlands upside down. Even though he was only at the Return to Void stage, everyone was already treating him as a Tao Integration Stage super mighty figure. After all, power was everything, and the fist was the hard truth. The fact that he could fight against the Blood Race's almighty beings proved what his level was like. The Heavenly Human Tribe Great General was even more certain of his suspicions upon seeing this, and the signal to retreat erupted throughout the entire Heavenly Snake Lightning Lake battlefield. The 6 Heavenly Human Tribe Great Generals also began to retreat. However, White Spirit Snake wasn't going to let them go so easily. She immediately brandished her Yin and Yang swords to create a massive Yin and Yang grindstone domain. Fire and ice circulated and blended together, using Yang to attack and Yin to bind the enemy. Even if the strength of the 6 Heaven Enlightenment Realm Marshals was exceedingly formidable, it was also hard to break free of that woman's entrapment formation in a short while. Boom! Scorching holy flames form a ring of flames, trapping a blue skeleton at the center. Even the space around it was sealed at the same time, cutting off any possibility of spatial skipping. The Tao of the Vermilion Bird and the Tao of the True Dragon surged toward the God Engulfing Skeleton like a tsunami, making it feel as if it were being scrutinized by 2 regal holy beasts that had been born from chaos. The God Engulfing Skeleton's expression remained calm and collected. It turned to look at Su Xiaolan with a perplexed expression. Divine Phoenix Maiden, is there some kind of misunderstanding between us? Su Xiaolan's dragon sparrow sword glowed with a bone-chilling light. Holy flames and lightning roared as boundless killing intent burst forth from the red and blue blades, and she stared at the God Engulfing Skeleton in silence. And Lin knew that this was a time for revenge, and he wanted his opponent to know the reason for his death. He could see that Su Xiaolan was still accumulating power, so he offered an explanation in a cold voice. Do you remember Su Guanyun and Zhu Yishuang from the Void Spirit Realm 100 years ago? A reminiscent expression appeared on the God Engulfing Skeleton's face. Su Guanyun and Zhu Yishuang. After a short while, it came to a sudden realization. Oh, you're talking about those Vermilion Bird sect cultivators who snuck into the Void Spirit Realm? He, he, he. Of course I remember them. I'm so touched that they risked their lives to save Zhu Shuza. Even though it said this, it did not appear to be touched in the slightest. Instead, an expression of mockery appeared on its face. That little bee asterisk starred was quite impressive. He eventually became the sect leader of the Vermilion Bird sect, but he still couldn't do anything to me. I love seeing him hate me, but he can't kill me. The god engulfing skeleton was not remorseful in the slightest. Instead, it became even more excited and perverted as it stared at Su Xiaolan with blue flames burning in its eyes. Divine Phoenix Maiden Su Xiaolan, Su Guanyin. Oh, could it be the other daughter? That really makes me. Right at this moment, a sword projection that pierced through the heavens fell from above. The holy flame sword might incinerated the heavens, and it was as if it were going to engulf this entire world. The god engulfing skeleton swung its crimson scythe upward, and it was extremely fast. Boom! The two weapons clashed, and the space within a radius of over 50 kilometers was instantly shattered. The holy flame and the crimson energy clashed with one another. Su Xiaolan appeared before the god engulfing skeleton with killing intent surging forth like a tsunami. God engulfing skeleton, I'm going to destroy your body and soul today. The god engulfing skeleton blocked Su Xiaolan's dragon sparrow sword with its crimson scythe, and a cold smile appeared on its face. You're overestimating yourself. However, right at this moment, a burst of terrifying might suddenly enshrouded its entire body. The eyes of the woman before it turned into a pure golden color, and the insignia of the vermilion bird appeared on her forehead. Translucent golden dragon scales also appeared all over her body. Boom. Su Xiaolan's aura soared explosively, and the divine Tao powers of the vermilion bird and true dragon soared explosively at the same time. And Lin's heart jolted with shock. So Su Xiaolan hadn't unleashed her true trump card yet. The supreme cry of the vermilion bird, born from chaos, resounded through the 9 heavens. This was accompanied by a peerlessly powerful sword projection. The sword projection was pure white, and it was the purest and hottest power in this world. It was imbued with the power to crush all obstacles, transcend beyond the 3 realms, and transform into the most terrifying attack. The god engulfing skeleton felt as if it were facing the charge of a vermilion bird, and it was unable to defend itself with its scythe against the overwhelming power of this sword strike. Bam! The power passed through its body. The god engulfing skeleton let loose a heart-wrenching cry of anguish. Its ribs were instantly charred black, and its entire body was engulfed by holy flames as it plummeted to the ground like a fireball. Chapter 1526. The god engulfing skeleton was surrounded by Black Spirit Snake, the divine Phoenix Maiden, and Enlin. All of the living beings had thought that the god engulfing skeleton, as the most powerful super mighty figure in the Void Spirit tribe, would at least be able to hold its own. Who would have thought that it would be suppressed by the divine Phoenix Maiden? The god engulfing skeleton's blood-curdling cries were still reverberating through the air. When did the divine Phoenix Maiden become so powerful? Wasn't the divine Phoenix Maiden supposed to be a normal Tao integration stage, super mighty figure? Since when was she able to wound the god engulfing skeleton, who was at the Tao integration pinnacle stage? Enlin was also quite surprised, but he could sense that Su Xiaolan's aura was a little unstable. Was this a buff mystic technique? Blood suddenly trickled down the corners of Su Xiaolan's lips, but it was quickly incinerated by her holy flames. Xiaolan. Enlin's heart throbbed with pain upon seeing this. He wasn't going to stop Su Xiaolan from unleashing her mystic technique. This was the vengeance that Su Xiaolan had accumulated for over 100 years, so he respected her decision. Su Xiaolan didn't say anything. She only had eyes for the god engulfing skeleton. The god engulfing skeleton and Ember were the ones who had killed her parents. She had repressed this vengeance for over 100 years and cultivated diligently to become more powerful so that she could avenge her parents one day. She was still not powerful enough to go to the void spirit realm in person to seek vengeance from the two Tao integration stage super mighty figures. However, the god engulfing skeleton had appeared here on its own, and this was the perfect opportunity for her to exact vengeance. Whoosh! Su Xiaolan tore through space and pounced toward the god engulfing skeleton again. Black Spirit Snake asked in a polite manner, can I join in as well? Her opponent was clearly here for vengeance, so she wanted to know what her attitude was. Of course, Su Xiaolan replied without any hesitation. No. The god engulfing skeleton's expression shifted drastically. Black Spirit Snake, hee hee. A divine sword fell from the sky toward the god engulfing skeleton without any mercy. The dragon sparrow sword whistled through the air before stabbing toward the god engulfing skeleton from another angle. The god engulfing skeleton could only swing its crimson scythe relentlessly to defend itself against the combined attacks of the two women. It knew that it had underestimated the Divine Phoenix Maiden. The Divine Phoenix Maiden was far more powerful than the information they had received, and it was exactly because of this F** king information that it had been given the upper hand. And Lin looked on at the two women who were attacking the god engulfing skeleton in a frenzy and chose to assist them from the side, using his devastating rainbow lightning to restrict the god engulfing skeleton's movements. At this moment, an extremely holy golden light descended from the sky. It was imbued with the purest and most powerful intent of the heavens, and it enshrouded the 6 heavenly human tribe, great generals within it. Crap, it's the light of guidance. White Spirit Snake gritted her teeth and slashed with her yin and yang dual swords. However, her sword projections were kept at bay by a power that kept everything at bay. The 6 heavenly human tribe great generals stood in a special position to summon the light of guidance, upon which their bodies began to fade and disappear from heaven and earth. White Spirit Snake was still standing on the golden light with all her might, but she discovered with despair that she was completely unable to break through the light of guidance. This is the power of the heavens. How dare mere mortals like you think you can break through it? The heavenly human tribe, great general, raised his head with an arrogant expression. If I want to leave, no one can stop me. Boom! A bolt of golden void lightning tore through space before crashing into the light of guidance. Immediately afterward, right before the 6 heavenly human tribe, great generals' astonished and horrified eyes, the golden void lightning tore through the light of guidance before puncturing the heavenly human tribe great general who had just spoken. Everyone instantly fell silent. The heavenly human tribe great generals all fell into a momentary daze. Senior and Lin. White Spirit Snake's eyes lit up as she yelled excitedly. She knew that this was all in Lin's doing. And Lin had already turned his attention away from the heavenly human tribe. He didn't take them seriously at all, and a faint smile appeared on his face upon hearing White Spirit Snake's cry. Hurry up and kill them all. Yes. White Spirit Snake nodded before pouncing toward the 6 heavenly human tribe, great generals again. Split up. A heavenly human tribe, great general yelled. All of the great generals knew that it was impossible for all of them to escape unscathed, so they immediately split up into 6 different directions and fled at an extremely fast speed. No matter how powerful White Spirit Snake was, there was no way she could stop all 6 heavenly human tribe great generals at once, so she could only choose one of them. As for the other heavenly human tribe great generals, they were confident that no one else could stop them. Whoosh, a white light barrier suddenly enshrouded the 6 heavenly human tribe great generals within a radius of over 50 kilometers. What are you running for? Come and play with me. An extremely authoritative voice that seemed to have come from the top of the heavens rang out, but there was a hint of disdain and contempt in its tone. It was as if the 6 marshals were all rats that were scurrying about, and he was the hunter. A man stood proudly in the sky with a dazzling divine light emanating from his imperial robe. The celestial arch had descended. A great general materialized a holy spear in his hand before hurling it toward the man in an attempt to stab him to death. However, the celestial arch gripped the holy spear tightly in his hand. In the next instant, the great general suddenly lost control of the holy spear. The celestial arch hurled the holy spear toward the great general at an even faster speed. The great general was just about to evade when he discovered that the space around him had congealed into a solid metal bucket, binding his body tightly. No! He frantically constructed a series of holy light defenses. However, the holy spear was imbued with the celestial thearcha's power, and it tore through the great general's defenses before puncturing his body in half. The heavenly human tribe, great general's expression of incredulity froze on his face, and he was already dead. A faint smile appeared on the celestial thearcha's face. Do you want to split up? You won't be able to take a single attack from me without forming a battle formation. Gasp. His words shocked all of the living beings present. However, no one could ignore the fact that he had insta-killed a heavenly human tribe great general with a single attack. The Celestial Arch. He's a Celestial Arch, the most powerful being in the kingdom of the 9 states. The Celestial Arch? Run. This time, the heavenly human tribe united army didn't even need the heavenly human tribe great general to urge them to retreat, and all of them immediately fled for their lives. The 100-head divine monster looked as if it had seen a ghost, and it fled even faster. It couldn't afford to mess with this mighty being. The Golden Sun Snake Emperor immediately gave chase upon seeing the 100-head divine monster fleeing. However, the Golden Sun Snake Emperor wasn't able to force the 100-head divine monster to stay. The god-engulfing skeleton had sustained about a dozen wounds in a short time after being attacked by the 2 women. The celestial thearcha's arrival had completely dispelled its will to fight, and it immediately chose to flee. You're not getting away. Su Xiaolan spread open her holy flame wings and gave chase at an extremely fast speed. The god-engulfing skeleton harumphed coldly as its speed increased explosively once again. If it wanted to escape, even a super mighty figure at the Tao integration pinnacle stage wouldn't be able to stop it. However, at this moment, a man suddenly appeared before it. My wife told you not to go. Didn't you hear her? And Lin spoke in a cold voice. Chapter 1527. The god-engulfing skeleton faltered slightly at the sight of Lin, but a sinister smile then appeared on its face as it slashed its scythe toward Lin. Die! The scythe drew a shocking red line in the air. It was like the Grim Reaper that had seized billions of lives. It pounced forward and bit down, causing one's heart to palpitate. The power of the divine tool was perfectly integrated with the power of the divine Tao. This attack was more terrifying than all of the spell techniques unleashed by the mighty figures Lin had faced in the past. And Lin instantly donned a thick turtle shell over his body. The god-engulfing skeleton's attack landed on his body and tore his turtle shell apart. However, the remaining power was not enough to completely slice through his body of the war god, and it only managed to leave a gash on his chest. And Lin's triple buff body drastically increased his power. The space around him instantly became pitch black. Evil-slaying sword divine tool domain. And Lin raised his evil-slaying sword high into the air and unleashed his evil sword technique, Eternal Night. This attack was imbued with the power of great annihilation, and the god-engulfing skeleton was struck by the purest darkness. Its expression shifted drastically upon sensing this darkness. It immediately placed the darkness pearl before itself, upon which boundless black light erupted forth. A resounding boom erupted, and its body was knocked flying by the power of the sword. Thank God my extreme darkness pearl was able to block that attack. The god-engulfing skeleton heaved a sigh of relief. All of a sudden, bam! Its chest inexplicably exploded. Its blue bones began to shatter, and a massive hole appeared. This was indescribable pain. After its body was severely damaged, its agony escalated to the extreme. The god-engulfing skeleton's blood-curdling cries reverberated through the darkness. The darkness receded, and Enlin panted heavily with his evil-slaying sword in his hand. The vanquish the heavens and slay all evil annihilation technique really was terrifyingly powerful, but it was a little too exhausting. The god engulfing skeleton's body trembled as it clasped its hands over its chest, clearly having yet to recover from the shock of Enlin's power. At this moment, a woman in a jade dress had already appeared behind it, and her dragon sparrow flame blade instantly sliced through the god engulfing skeleton's neck. A sharp hissing sound rang out. Su Xiaolan's eyes narrowed. She found that when her sword collided with the bone, there was an explosion of sparks, but she was unable to cut through the opponent's neck bone. At this moment, the god engulfing skeleton's scythe had already made an arc in the air before slashing towards Su Xiaolan with terrifying sharpness. Su Xiaolan immediately withdrew her sword to block. The sword and scythe clashed, and the immense force sent the girl flying. However, it was also at this moment that Enlin appeared in front of the god engulfing skeleton again. Streams of wind revolved around his evil-slaying sword, and his speed was astonishingly fast. He had taken advantage of the moment when the god engulfing skeleton was about to attack Su Xiaolan. Enlin lunged toward the god engulfing skeleton's head. The god engulfing skeleton's expression shifted slightly, and a dark light erupted from the extreme darkness bead in its left hand before enshrouding its entire body. Enlin's evil-slaying sword fell upon the black light, as if it had fallen into a quagmire, and its power quickly drained away. Destroy evil. A voice drifted over. An indescribable sword projection fell from the sky. It was as pristine white as the clouds, as blue as the ocean, as verdant as a forest, and as dazzling as a rainbow. It seemed to encompass all of the colors in this world, yet it wasn't any of the colors in this world. The god engulfing skeleton raised its head, and its expression shifted drastically. It didn't even have a chance to unleash a defensive spell technique before the sword projection tore through the extreme darkness bead's defenses before crashing into the ground with terrifying sealing power. Boom! The earth within a radius of over 150 kilometers was pulverized. Several hundred mountains were razed to the ground by the shockwaves. The god engulfing skeleton stood at the very center of the ground, and it looked up into the sky with astonishment on its face. Enlin was very familiar with this technique. This is the realm creation evil vanquishing sword technique. Black Spirit Snake must have been accumulating power for a long time before unleashing this earth-shattering technique. He was naturally not going to waste the opportunity that Black Spirit Snake had created, and he charged toward the god engulfing skeleton. On the other side, a green figure was also quickly closing in on the god engulfing skeleton. Vast holy might swept through the air, and it was as if a vermilion bird had descended from the heavens. Su Xiaolan and Enlin looked at each other, and they didn't need to say anything as they charged toward the god engulfing skeleton from two different directions at the same time. Enlin unleashed the shadow tiger of the 6 strikes of the war god and instantly covered a distance of over a dozen kilometers. He arrived beside the god engulfing skeleton, and an inky black energy burst forth from his evil-slaying sword before slashing toward the god engulfing skeleton's spine. Dragon Sparrow Strike. Su Xiaolan wielded her dragon sparrow sword and swung it toward the god engulfing skeleton's shoulder. The two of them attacked at the same time, sealing off all of the god engulfing skeleton's paths of retreat. What a headache! The god engulfing skeleton's head was a little swollen. An earth-shattering crimson light suddenly erupted from its crimson scythe, and it slashed through the air in a circular manner, slicing everything in its path in half. Enlin and Su Xiaolan were both knocked flying by this circular side strike. However, they were only knocked back a few hundred meters before their bodies faltered and they continued toward the god engulfing skeleton. Enlin unleashed one sword strike after another, creating a dazzling spectacle to behold. Su Xiaolan was also peerlessly domineering. At times, she was like a celestial maiden that dazzled the heavens, and at other times she was like a graceful swan. The two of them transformed into black and white figures that attacked the god engulfing skeleton relentlessly. The god engulfing skeleton knew that any one of them would be dead for sure if they were to face it on their own. However, the two of them were extremely well coordinated, and they were able to force it into a quagmire. For example, after it had knocked one of them flying, the other would suddenly attack it. In order to protect itself, it had no time to chase after the one who was at a disadvantage. After it had knocked one of its opponents flying, the one who had been knocked flying earlier would charge toward it again. They were extremely well coordinated. They were extremely unpredictable and powerful attacks. The god engulfing skeleton was extremely frustrated. On top of that, there was also Black Spirit Snake, who was secretly accumulating power in the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of weapons clashing erupted throughout heaven and earth. The god engulfing skeleton swung its crimson scythe, which flashed with a crimson light, and each of its attacks was capable of parting mountains and splitting oceans. However, two streaks of light fell from the sky, leaving a series of dazzling trajectories in their wake as they hurtled toward the god engulfing skeleton one after another. Each and every collision was earth-shattering. All of the living beings on the battlefield could only see the god engulfing skeleton being forced into a corner. They couldn't even see the three of them. That's right, mortals couldn't even spectate a battle between immortals. The god engulfing skeleton swung its scythe toward Lin and finally knocked him flying again. At this moment, Su Xiaolan appeared before it again. Lightning flashed beneath her feet, and holy flames burned through the air from her sword. A ferocious expression appeared on the god engulfing skeleton's face, and the extreme darkness bead in its left hand suddenly released a peculiar ripple. Countless emotions suddenly exploded in Su Xiaolan's mind, and a dazed expression appeared on her face. The god engulfing skeleton took advantage of this opportunity to swing its crimson scythe towards Su Xiaolan's neck without any hesitation. It had been fighting for a long time, and it was waiting for this instant to decide the outcome of this battle. This instant was enough to decide the life or death of a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. Lin focused his gaze, and invisible ripples instantly struck the god engulfing skeleton. Make you cry technique. Make you poo technique. The god engulfing skeleton was struck by two spell techniques, and boundless grief suddenly welled up in its heart as a sharp pain shot through its lower abdomen. King pain. I'm a bone. The god engulfing skeleton was completely dumbstruck. Right at this moment, Su Xiaolan came to her senses, and her dragon sparrow sword whistled through the air. Boom! The god engulfing skeleton was knocked flying again. The powerful blade radiance even caused its bones to crack again. Oh! The god engulfing skeleton roared with rage and frustration. Chapter 1528. The god engulfing skeleton was extremely frustrated by this battle. It had finally created an opportunity, only for it to be destroyed by that man's spell technique. If this battle continued, when would it ever end? Unless, when their buff mystic techniques couldn't hold on any longer. The god engulfing skeleton quickly blocked Su Xiaolan's attack. Dark blue flames burned within the hollow of its skull, as if it could detect her condition. The Divine Phoenix Maiden's buff mystic technique could only be maintained for a very short period of time. The god engulfing skeleton was still a little hesitant. Black Spirit Snake had disappeared from its field of vision, so she was most likely preparing some extremely terrifying spell technique. That sword strike just then had already wounded it. If she were to unleash another one, the god engulfing skeleton's mind raced, but it still decided to back down for now. Lin and Su Xiaolan slashed their swords toward the god engulfing skeleton again. The god engulfing skeleton suddenly let loose an almighty roar, and its power of the divine Tao erupted forth. Divine Bone Permitha Ghost. An extremely dark divine Tao light emanated from its translucent blue skeleton. Heaven and earth suddenly became viscous, and the true intent of rebirth proliferated forth along with its divine Tao. This is the aura of death. A grave expression appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. Why do I feel like I want to die? Lin discovered that something was amiss. The god engulfing skeleton's power of the divine Tao was imbued with a very special type of emotional power that could affect one's mind. It was as if it were saying that rebirth was the ultimate bliss and death was the ultimate bliss. However, this was not the main point of the god engulfing skeleton's power of the divine Tao. A series of vibrant permetha flowers bloomed on the ground. A Stygian river flowed through the ground, with no end in sight. At the same time, countless skeletons of dead beings suddenly began to pile up on the ground. And Lin was not going to take his time to appreciate the god engulfing skeleton's power of the divine Tao, and he immediately unleashed his evil sword technique toward the god engulfing skeleton. All of a sudden, the permetha flowers turned blue, and they unleashed a burst of blue energy, which swept up the skeletons from the ground before materializing again. It was an 8-armed, ghostly creature with bones as its core and divine Tao as its flesh and blood. The 8-armed, ghostly being positioned itself in front of Lin, and its arm was enshrouded in the power of the divine Tao as it slapped toward Lin. Get lost! And Lin swung his evil-slaying sword with all his might, and an inky black sword intent soared into the sky before crashing down upon the monster's head, clearly planning to insta-kill the monster. However, the 8-armed ghost's 8 arms suddenly formed 8 different hand seals and blocked the attack. The sword chi exploded. The ground within 100 li was crushed. The 8-armed ghost screamed in pain as it retreated. Its arm had been crushed to pieces, revealing its sturdy and ferocious bones. Surprisingly, the bones were not damaged at all. It let loose an almighty roar before pouncing toward Lin again. And Lin furrowed his brows. Isn't the strength of the ghost summoned by the other party a little too strong? On the other side, Su Xiaolan had sent a dragon-shaped ghost flying. However, a gigantic, demonic eagle blocked her way, and it was extremely powerful. Ha! Everyone thinks I'm powerful because of my ultra-powerful attacks and skeletal Tao body. However, they don't know that my most powerful technique is my undead Tao, with the divine bone as the foundation and the permetha ghost as the catalyst. The ghosts I summon are the most powerful. The god engulfing skeleton roared with laughter as it charged toward the Styx River. And Lin's expression shifted slightly, and he immediately sped up. He knew what the Styx River, which stretched as far as the eye could see, represented. It was possible that the god engulfing skeleton would be able to completely disappear once it jumped into the river. This was a superb escape technique. It was an escape technique that merged the divine Tao with heaven and earth, and it was even more practical than spatial travel. Right at this moment, the clouds in the sky were suddenly obscured by a golden divine light. Everything in the arena began to slow down. This slowing down affected everyone's senses, including the god engulfing skeleton. The god engulfing skeleton could also sense that everything between heaven and earth had slowed down. The wind, the spell techniques, the battles taking place on the battlefield, and even its rapid sprint had all been reduced to the speed of a crawling turtle. A divine sword tore through the heavens with extreme sharpness. Golden divine light illuminated the world. Extremely thin chains wrapped around the sword like golden stars, ethereal as if they were from another world. Countless stars revolved around it, sealing the heavens. And Lin was extremely excited upon seeing this. Wasn't this the technique that Black Spirit Snake had used to seal the Holy Trinity Fiend Celestial? Divine Sword World Creation Evil Vanquishing Sword, Heaven and Earth Seal. As expected, Black Spirit Snake did not disappoint him. She had unleashed such an earth-shattering attack, right off the bat. Whoosh! A sword ringing erupted, as if the divine sword had completely awakened and was yawning. In the next instant, the divine sword pierced through heaven and earth, wielding the will of the heavens with its hilt as the heavens and the blade as the earth, suppressing all evil beings. The divine sword fell very quickly. In contrast, the god engulfing skeleton was moving in slow motion, and there was no time for it to evade. Boom! Boundless, inexhaustible sealing power surged forth from heaven and earth toward the god engulfing skeleton. A series of golden chains wound themselves around its body, sealing away all of its power. Even the entire sky had been plundered by the might of this sword strike. Regardless of whether it was the fleeing Heavenly Human Tribe United Army or the pursuing Spirit Lake Realm United Army, all of them turned toward that direction. There was a boundless sword intent, the most dazzling divine light, and the most terrifying power. And Lin looked at the god engulfing skeleton, which was wailing incessantly under the weight of the divine sword, and he couldn't help but stroke his evil-slaying sword with a wistful expression. Little Xia, you're also a divine sword, but how can you become as bad *SS as it? I'll just have to find a more bad *SS master. A cold, mocking voice sounded from the sword. And Lin, that was just as piercing as ever. Su Xiaolan had already taken this opportunity to charge toward the god engulfing skeleton in an attempt to land the killing blow. The god engulfing skeleton roared as it struggled with all its might in an attempt to break free. A scintillating light erupted from the heavenly resurrection flower, and one bone after another flew into the air before converging to form all types of powerful ghostly beings that pounced towards Su Xiaolan. The dragon sparrow sword was enveloped by holy flames, and it slashed through the air relentlessly, slicing apart one ghostly being after another. Su Xiaolan was also unable to get close to the god engulfing skeleton due to the ghostly beings around her. And Lin also sprang into action at this moment. He was like a bolt of black lightning that flashed through the air at an extremely fast speed. Flames suddenly erupted from the god engulfing skeleton's eyes. It roared as its entire body trembled violently, as if it were exerting an extremely terrifying power to crush the golden chains. The golden chains began to tremble as well. The god engulfing skeleton's Tao bones suddenly began to crack open, and a peculiar divine light began to emanate from within. The god engulfing skeleton let loose an almighty roar as its bones cracked open. At the same time, the golden chains binding the realm creation evil vanquishing sword were also completely shattered. The god engulfing skeleton immediately flew toward the Styx River. And Lin's expression shifted drastically. Things were not looking good for him. There was no way he could catch up to it at this speed. Chapter 1529. A decisive expression appeared on Lin's face as he looked at the fleeing god engulfing skeleton. Anyone could escape, but this enemy of Xiaolan's couldn't be allowed to leave. He had to keep it here, no matter the cost. A ring of wind appeared above Lin's head, from which boundless divine might exuded. Boom! A paramount aura that seemed to encompass the entire world began to emanate from Lin's body, striking onlookers with a sense of invincibility. The god engulfing skeleton also sensed this power, and its expression shifted in shock. What technique is this? And Lin didn't say anything. A wisp of white wind revolved around his evil-slaying sword as he slashed it toward the skeleton. The wind transformed into a white sword projection that pierced through space and slashed toward the god engulfing skeleton. The god engulfing skeleton had been severely wounded by the repeated attacks it had sustained, and it didn't have much energy left. In the face of this white line, its bones trembled uncontrollably, as if it were in fear. For some reason, the god engulfing skeleton was struck by a feeling that this was a wind slash that could slice through all things. It immediately used its extreme darkness bead to construct layers of divine Tao defenses before continuing to rush toward the Stygian River. Whoosh! The wind slash easily tore through the extreme darkness bead's defenses. The god engulfing skeleton felt a peerlessly sharp blade strike its skeletal Tao body, and its Tao body, which was comparable to an immortal tool, began to crack open. It let loose a wail of anguish. Not only was it feeling physical pain, but it was also feeling like its consciousness was being torn apart. That sparkling and translucent bone body actually dimmed a little. The power of the wind slash gradually dissipated, and an inky black crack appeared on the god engulfing skeleton's body from its skull all the way down to its crotch. Oh, its defenses are so powerful. I thought I would be able to slice you in half. And Lin suddenly spoke as he raised his sword again. An expression of shock and horror appeared on the god engulfing skeleton's face for the first time. Its instincts told it that if it were to take another attack from Enlin, it would definitely be sliced in half. Sacrifice. Extreme darkness, illusionary realm. The god engulfing skeleton roared as the black pearl in its left hand suddenly cracked open. Immediately afterward, boundless darkness enshrouded heaven and earth. It had sacrificed a divine tool to unleash an earth-shattering spell technique. A wave of god-level power violently attacked the divine souls of all living beings. A black sun hung high in the sky, plunging the world into darkness. Only the black sun released a strange light. This was an AoE attack. Some of the weaker beings couldn't resist this power. Their eyes rolled back and they foamed at the mouth. Their souls were destroyed and they died. Some of the living beings managed to hold on, but countless illusions appeared before their eyes, and some of them even sank into the illusions, unable to free themselves. Even Dao integration stage, super mighty figures like Black Spirit Snake, Su Xiaolan, and Enlin were struck by an extremely violent blow to their consciousness. Enlin was the first to regain consciousness due to the support of the Wind God Ring. He immediately used his power of wind to condense a blade of wind and slash the black sun in the sky in half. Rumble, the dark world was shattered. Light reappeared in the world. The wind was still howling, and the ground was full of scars. All of the death lily flowers on the ground began to wilt. Their bones had already been buried deep into the ground. One of the yellow springs had already disappeared. The god engulfing skeleton had also disappeared. Heaven and earth fell silent, as if it were the deathly stillness that followed the earth-shattering battle. Enlin gripped his evil-slaying sword tightly and took a deep breath. F***CK. Our Dao integration stage, super mighty figures sacrificing divine tools for no reason these days? Emperor Yi Deng had done so, and so had the god engulfing skeleton. Why had he never heard of a sacrificial method for divine tools? With this in mind, he suddenly turned to look at the evil-slaying sword. Little Xia seemed to know what her master was thinking, and a cold smile appeared on her face. You want to kill me? I'm sorry, but I won't be sacrificed even if you die. And Lin, what a cruel sword spirit. Don't worry, I won't sacrifice you even if I die. After all, you're so adorable. And Lin repaid her with kindness with a smile. Little Xia shuddered slightly. She had been stunned by this statement. And Lin silently sheathed his evil-slaying sword, and his wind divine halo disappeared. He turned to look at the woman in the jade dress. She stared blankly at the dried-up river as she gripped her dragon sparrow sword tightly. Perhaps she was gripping her sword too tightly, but even her fingertips had turned a little white. Xiaolan, and Lin called out lightly. Su Xiaolan turned to look at him, and her bright and beautiful eyes were now red. A hint of dejection appeared on her face as she bit down on her lower lip. And Lin, am I really useless? The person who killed my parents is standing right before me. And Lin's body flashed to Su Xiaolan's side before wrapping his arms tightly around her. It's all right. We'll have plenty of opportunities in the future. Let's keep it alive for a few more days. He could feel that the woman in his arms was still trembling slightly, and it was clear that she had yet to calm down. In the end, Xiaolan collapsed onto the ground. And Lin faltered slightly as he looked at the woman in his arms. Did she faint from exhaustion from overexerting her mystic technique? He carefully inspected Xiaolan's condition to find that her body and meridians had all been severely damaged. Thankfully, none of her vital organs had been damaged, but she was most likely going to lose her ability to battle for a very long time. And Lin fed Su Xiaolan an immortal pill before placing her into the Blood Soul Jade coffin and carrying her on his back. On the battlefield, he could only protect Xiaolan at his side. Black Spirit Snake descended from the sky with a massive golden sword in her hand, and her lips twitched at the sight of Enlin carrying a coffin on his back. She really wanted to grumble at Enlin's antics. Why did she feel like the male lead was carrying the dead female lead on his back and trying to resurrect her? However, her good upbringing prevented her from grumbling. The god-engulfing skeleton and the 100-head divine monster have both escaped, but we can kill all of the heavenly human tribe great generals, Black Spirit Snake said. In a battle in the cultivation world, the most important thing was to eliminate the most powerful beings on the enemy's side. Hence, killing the heavenly human tribe great generals was their top priority. And Lin shook his head. The 100-head divine monster won't be able to escape unless it also knows some disgusting techniques, like sacrificing a divine tool. Otherwise, it's dead for sure, just like that Void Spirit Tri-Mighty figure at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage who thought he had escaped from Nanchao City. Black Spirit Snake turned to Enlin with a confused and inquisitive expression. Enlin smiled. Let's keep this a secret for now. Rumble. Heaven and earth suddenly transformed. A burst of anguished wails erupted between heaven and earth. A sense of sorrow welled up in all of the living beings' hearts. Black Spirit Snake's eyes widened, and her features were filled with astonishment. A faint smile appeared on Lin's face. See? I told you, the 100-head divine monster is dead for sure. Chapter 1530. This phenomenon appeared between heaven and earth. Almost all of the living beings present realized this fact. A Tao integration stage, super mighty figure had fallen. White snow filled the sky, falling with the wind. A chill ran down everyone's spine. Thankfully, the heavenly snake lightning lake was a lightning attribute lake, so it was quite violent. Otherwise, they would have been frozen solid by this chill. And Lin looked up at the dancing snowflakes with astonishment on his face. The snowflakes were glittering and translucent under the sunlight. They danced in the wind and appeared to be pristine and flawless. Most importantly, the shape and even the curvature of the ice crystals were identical. It was said that no two identical snowflakes could be found in this world, and that each and every snowflake was unique. But now, the snowflakes that filled the sky all had the same appearance, down to the level of molecular arrangement. There was no difference at all. Black Spirit Snake murmured to herself. Each and every head of the 100-head divine monster represents a vastly renowned, immortal beast on this continent, and each and every head possesses a different type of power of the divine Tao. Each of these heads possesses unfathomable power of the divine Tao and are extremely difficult to defend against. I finally know what its divine Tao is now. To be able to transform a snowflake into a sea of identical snowflakes requires unparalleled replication power. Lin's eyes lit up slightly. You're saying that it's walking on the replication divine Tao. Black Spirit Snake nodded. That's right. After killing a powerful enemy, it can take their Tao as its own and develop it into a power of the divine Tao that is unique to the enemy, and Lin was a little astonished. An enemy like this was actually quite terrifying as it possessed boundless potential. However, none of the Tao integration stage super mighty figures were easy to deal with. The heavenly human tribe Heaven Pioneer stage great generals could unleash Tao integration stage power at full power, but in a real battle, which Tao integration stage super mighty figure couldn't kill them. All of the Tao integration stage super mighty figures had forged their own unique Tao, and they had progressed to an extremely profound level in their Tao, to the point where the great Tao of heaven and earth had no choice but to acknowledge their Tao. How could a Heaven Pioneer stage heavenly human tribe great generals compare? If the heavenly human tribe wanted to kill Tao integration stage super mighty figures, they could only rely on numbers and spell formations. And Lin turned toward the heavenly human tribe great generals in the sky. Half of the 6 great generals had already been killed by White Spirit Snake and the Celestial Arch. There were still 3 great generals alive, and they had formed a combined spell formation to hold on. But from the looks of it, he wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. There was no need for Enlin to do anything. Seeing this, Enlin swallowed an immortal pill and silently watched from the side. Black Spirit Snake also swallowed an immortal pill before flying into the distance to prevent the heavenly human tribe from escaping. The battlefield was ever-changing, and the most important thing to do was to maintain a good state of mind. Otherwise, it would be a complete tragedy if they exhausted themselves after defeating a strong enemy with great difficulty and were beheaded by another enemy. 40,000 li away from the heavenly snake lightning lake. A delicate-looking youth in brown linen clothes said with a speechless expression, "Raphael, how much longer will it take? We're already very far away from Enlin. We won't be able to protect Enlin like this." "Don't worry, these are all very good ingredients. With these, I can refine a few dozen regenerative immortal pills." An extremely beautiful six-winged angel stood atop a massive creature and carefully severed one head after another before placing it into her storage ring. This was a Tao integration stage 100-head divine monster that had just died, and each of its heads was imbued with an extremely special power of the divine Tao. After processing it with a spell technique while it was still hot, it would be able to preserve its original flavor and nutritional value, which would make pill refinement even more perfect. The ancient dragon empress was resting off to the side. There were white bandages wrapped around her arm, from which blood had stained the bandages in the shape of plum blossoms. It was quite clear that she had just experienced an intense battle. Of course, the final result was that the 100-head divine monster had fallen while she had only sustained minor injuries. "It's a pity that the god-engulfing skeleton got away," the ancient dragon empress said with a disappointed expression. "A being at the pinnacle of the Tao integration stage is obviously not easy to capture. It's not our main target anyway, so there's no need to worry too much about it." Chun Chun was a little nonchalant as he looked on at the battle taking place in the extremely far distance. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army had already retreated to the other side of the Heavenly Snake Lightning Lake. Their army had been drastically reduced to 5 million. On the contrary, the Spirit Lake Realm United Army still had over 6 million soldiers, which was already a significant number. The Phoenix constructed the Great Heaven Incinerating Cage formation again to trap the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army within it. It looked like the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army was going to follow the same path as the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. The fall of a Tao integration stage super mighty figure was another lethal blow to the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army was still fighting like a cornered beast, but they were no match for the Spirit Lake Realm United Army and the Extermination Team. One powerful being after another entered the battlefield, and it was only a matter of time before the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army was destroyed. The Golden Sun Snake Emperor returned to the battlefield. Black Spirit Snake turned to him with a questioning expression. The Golden Sun Snake Emperor scratched his head with a perplexed expression. "I couldn't catch up to the 100-head divine monster, so I turned back to help you." However, not long after that, I was greeted by the sight of a Tao integration stage super mighty figure falling from heaven and earth. Black Spirit Snake couldn't help but turn to look at Enlin upon hearing this. Enlin, on the other hand, was enjoying the battles taking place on the battlefield with a nonchalant expression. Dubai was like a wild dog that had set itself free, pouncing on the Blood Tribe powerful beings and biting down on all of its enemies. Its philosophy was different from Enlin's. Enlin liked the feeling of killing enemies at a higher rank than him, but Dubai liked the feeling of crushing one's opponent at a higher rank. That's right, it was already a return to Void Stage Immortal Beast, but it was fighting a bunch of Spirit Nurturing Stage and Soul Formation Stage opponents, and crushing them with its rank. Xiao Hong was like a lazy fish when it came to fighting. All she did was stand silently on the battlefield and sway with the wind. All living beings within a radius of over 10 kilometers around her would be incinerated by the sun, thereby creating a zone where no one was allowed to enter. All of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army that saw Xiao Hong from afar would take a detour around her. As opposed to saying that Xiao Hong was powerful, it was more accurate to say that she was just a pawn. A return to Void Stage, Void Spirit Tribe mighty figure pounced toward Xiao Hong with its fangs bared, only to be crushed to death by the sudden appearance of the sun. It didn't even get a chance to touch Xiao Hong. Tina was the most eye-catching among all return to Void Stage mighty figures. She was at the pinnacle of the return to Void Stage, and she had created many God of Creation Stage divine techniques in her divine mirror world. If she were to use them on the Taichu continent, her combat prowess will be invincible below the Tao integration stage. Even the ancient Dragon Empress and Ao Xiaowu, who had once fought Lin to the death, weren't as powerful as Tina when they were at the return to Void Pinnacle stage. It was exactly because of this that Lin was most at ease with Little Na fighting here. As long as she didn't fight Tao integration stage super mighty figures head-on, everything would be fine. And Lin looked on at his beast pets and didn't notice that a streak of light was rapidly approaching from the distance. Chapter 1531. The Celestial Arch and White Spirit Snake attacked the three great generals of the heavenly human tribe. The three heavenly human tribe great generals spat out mouthfuls of blood as they stumbled back in retreat. If the array was broken, the three of them would be instantly killed. All of a sudden, the Celestial Arch paused and turned his gaze toward the distance. At the end of the horizon, a golden light was rapidly approaching. The heavenly human tribe great general was ecstatic. This aura, it's heavenly goddess Linyu. Ha ha! Our heavenly goddess Linyu is here. You're all dead. All of you will truly feel what the heavenly god realm is. The three heavenly human tribe great generals were extremely excited as they spoke with a cold expression on their faces. To them, the heavenly god realm was the greatest realm. It was the power they yearned for day and night. Now that heavenly goddess Linyu had descended, their enemies were about to be dealt a devastating blow. It was also at this moment that the Celestial Arch and White Spirit Snake unleashed extremely terrifying power at the same time toward the formation created by the three heavenly human tribe mighty figures. Bang! The grand formation shattered. All three heavenly human tribe great generals were astonished. How I feel in the heavenly god realm is my business, but you won't be able to wait for your boss to come. Celestial Arch sneered. An enormous power of the divine Tao erupted forth, instantly pulverizing the three heavenly human tribe great generals into mincemeat. The great generals of the heavenly human tribe had all been killed. The Celestial Arch shook his head slightly. He really didn't know why these great generals were so happy. They really didn't understand the situation they were in. Seeing as a divine heaven stage, heavenly human tribe cultivator had arrived, why would he give them a chance to live? He would definitely get rid of him as soon as possible. 1 second later, heaven and earth suddenly roared. Boundless golden light began to fill the sky. An extremely sacred and dignified aura spread throughout the world, as if a supreme being had descended upon the world. The Demon Alliance army was so frightened that they stopped their pursuit and looked up at the sky in awe. The Blood Tribe and Void Spirit Tribe cultivators of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army were also given a fright, and they didn't know what to do. Only the Heavenly Human Tribe mighty figures bowed toward the sky. Welcome, Heavenly Goddess Linyu. Golden divine radiance illuminated the earth. A figure appeared at the peak of the sky. When all living beings saw her, it was as if they were looking at the purest and holiest life in the world. She was not tainted by the mortal world and was not a creature that should exist in this world. Heavens, that's Lord God. So beautiful. All of the living beings on the ground were either astonished or mesmerized. And Lin also raised his head and couldn't help but look at that figure. A celestial deity stage, celestial human. He had long since heard of your illustrious name. It was said that every gate was guarded by a divine heaven stage, heavenly human with unfathomable strength. They were the most powerful beings in the heavenly human tribe. Even if she and the representatives of the heavenly Tao shared the title of heavenly goddess, the heavenly human tribe and the representatives of the heavenly Tao wouldn't find it inappropriate. This was enough to prove the status of a divine, heaven stage, heavenly human. Heavenly goddess Linyu wore a white dress of clouds and mist, and her lithe and exquisite body was indistinctly visible within the clouds and mist. Her flawless and pure arms were exposed to the wind. Her appearance was even more so perfect to the point of being impeccable. She had a sharp and small nose bridge, thin and beautiful lips, and clear yet gentle golden pupils. She wasn't like ordinary celestial race members who were indifferent towards the common people. On the contrary, the color of her emotions was a bit stronger. For example, Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu wrinkled her nose with an enraged expression. So many have died. I'm still too late. Her voice was as clear as a spring flowing in the sky. She then turned toward the celestial arch, white spirit snake, black spirit snake, the golden sun snake emperor, the phoenix, and Lin, as well as the coffin on Lin's back. In that instant, Lin felt as if his entire body had been seen through by Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu. A sense of danger welled up in his heart. You're Lin? The person who is able to wield powers similar to the heavenly Tao that my subordinates reported to me? Lin Yu asked. The celestial arch, and Lin, a conflicted expression appeared on the celestial thearch's face. Should he deny this, or should he take the blame for Lin? It was best to help Lin conceal his identity at a time like this. No, Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu, he's Lin. A soul-piercing stage general pointed at a man with a coffin on his back in the distance. An awkward expression appeared on Lin Yu's face, and she nodded before taking a glance at the general before turning toward Lin. And Lin glowered at the general with an enraged expression. Sorry, but he had committed that man's face to memory. Lin, Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu stared at Lin. This was the reason why Lin didn't want to use his powers of the Heavenly Tao. He was going to be targeted by the Heavenly Tao sooner or later, and Lin was already mentally prepared for a storm, and he glowered at Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu with a cold expression. You're so young. A vibrant smile appeared on Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's face. Her smile made heaven and earth feel as if they had been revitalized. It was a beautiful, natural, and boundlessly beautiful smile. All of the living beings felt like this smile was a little dazzling. And Lin was completely dumbstruck. This heavenly goddess wasn't playing by the rules. What was going on? You're only in your 20s, but you've already reached the return to void stage, and your cultivation method is so unique. How strange. Countless divine symbols flashed through Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's eyes as she spoke with a smile. And Lin's heart jolted upon hearing this. Everyone thought that he was already over 100 years old. So how did Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu know that he was actually only in his 20s? Or did she know about the Heavenly Time God through his vital signs? Aside from that, Lin Yu even knew about his unique cultivation method. How did she know this? And Lin felt like he had a lot fewer secrets in front of this Heavenly Goddess. The Heavenly Goddess stretched out 2 slender fingers and said in a light voice, I'll give you 2 choices. First, you follow me obediently and we'll be friends. If you do that, I'll let these humans live for a while longer. Second, if you don't want to come with me, then I'll kill all of them before taking you away by force. Make your choice. Almost all of the living beings present were given a fright upon hearing this. Not only were they astonished by Lin Yu's domineering words, but they were also astonished by her invitation to Lin. Imagine this. The most powerful legendary being on their side was inviting an enemy general to be her friend. What the F*CK was going to happen? She'll let these humans go if Lin becomes her friend? Just what kind of status does a heavenly goddess like Lin have in her eyes? Could it be that Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu has taken a liking to Lin? Impossible. The heavenly gods only serve the heavens and represent the will of the heavens. How could they have feelings for one another? This is unbelievable. What the hell is going on? All of the living beings on the ground were astonished, and they began to discuss among themselves. Everything that was happening was far too bizarre. Celestial Arch, Black Spirit Snake, and the others turned to look at Lin with shock and bewilderment on their faces. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu blinked a few times upon seeing that Lin was still in a daze, and a mischievous smile appeared on her face. What do you think? Heavenly Lightning God? Or Heavenly Wind God? Chapter 1532. Heavenly Lightning God? Heavenly Wind God? Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's words exploded in everyone's minds like a clap of thunder. What did that mean? None of the living beings present were idiots, and they were naturally aware of what Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu was implying. And Lin is a heavenly god, Could it be that the heavenly god, that heavenly goddess Lin Yu, is referring to? And Lin is also a manifestation of a heavenly god? Gasp! There's a traitor in the human race? We've been fighting for so long, and Lin is our ally? Heavenly goddess Lin Yu's friend is naturally also our master. Holy F asterisk CK. And Lin is from the other side? We're enemies. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army and the Spirit Lake Realm United Army both turned toward Lin with shock and confusion in their eyes. Most of the living beings on the Spirit Lake Realm United Army felt like they had been betrayed. In contrast, the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army felt like they had been screwed over. If they had known that Lin was a heavenly god, they wouldn't have fought like this. Why was Lin so vicious? Why was he showing no mercy to his own allies? Very soon, all the living beings realized that things were not as they had imagined. Lin was completely unmoved by Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's choice, and a cold smile appeared on his face. Heavenly Wind God? Heavenly Lightning God? Sorry, I'm neither of those, but those two heavenly gods did indeed die by my hands. Everyone erupted into an uproar upon hearing this. None of the powerful beings present had heard of the Heavenly Wind God and Heavenly Lightning God, but Lin was telling them that he had killed both of them. They all knew what a heavenly god represented. That was the authority of the heavenly Tao, the supreme heavens. Two of them had been slain by Lin. What kind of power did Lin have to possess to be able to do that? All of the living beings stared at the white-robed man on the ground with expressions of shock and horror. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu was not enraged by Lin's words. Instead, she nodded with a genuine smile on her face. You did indeed kill them, but you inherited their abilities, so you're the heavenly wind, lightning god. You're one of us, so I'm willing to befriend you. Rumble. These words were like a bolt of lightning that once again struck all the living beings present, leaving them charred on the outside and tender on the inside. Lin really wasn't an authority incarnation. However, the information revealed by these words was even more badass than the heavenly Tao embodiment. Not only did he kill two authority gods, but he also inherited their abilities? What kind of operation was this? Even the heaven-crushing sects, heavenly disciples, wouldn't be able to pull off something as bizarre as this. And Lin was also astonished by Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's attitude. He had killed a representative of the heavenly Tao. Yet Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu had chosen to forgive him and become friends with him? How could he be so forgiving? Black Spirit Snake felt like Lin was becoming more and more enigmatic, and she couldn't help but survey Lin with her inky black eyes. The Celestial Arch wasn't too surprised. After all, he had seen Lin kill the heavenly wind god, and he had also seen Lin use his powers of the heavenly gods. And Lin hesitated momentarily in response to Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's invitation before slowly drawing his evil-slaying sword and looking at Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu with a cautious expression. Lin Yu's golden eyes reflected the image of Lin as she spoke with incredulity. Are you refusing to become friends with me? Her brows furrowed slightly as she spoke with a pitiable expression. And Lin cursed her for being a nut job at his heart, but a calm smile appeared on his face. I'll consider it if you tell the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army to never oppose the human race again. No, the human race must be destroyed. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu shook her head. I'm also a human. And Lin harumphed coldly. You're not a human. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu looked at Lin with a serious expression. And Lin, all right, the negotiations have fallen apart. I'm such a high-spirited young man, but I'm being insulted by a heavenly goddess. No human would be able to accept such an insult. Boom. And Lin activated his threefold buff mystic technique again, elevating his power to the very peak. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu heaved a faint sigh. Why do you have to do this? You're all seeking death. The extermination team is going to kill all of the enemies along the way anyway, so killing a boss in advance is a good way to practice. And Lin was in high spirits. All of the extermination team members also drew their weapons as they looked at Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu with grave expressions. There was only one enemy, but no one dared to look down on her. A vexed expression appeared on Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's face. So be it. I'll kill all of you within a minute, and the god of creation won't be able to get here so quickly. Sigh, it's just that things are progressing a little too quickly. Kill everyone within a minute? All of the mighty figures present faltered slightly upon hearing this before a sense of disdain and humiliation welled up in their hearts. Who the F*** CK was she looking down on? She was invincible below the god of creation stage. Even against god of creation stage mighty figures, they would be able to last more than a minute. Ha ha ha! I've killed Heaven Pioneer stage mighty figures, but I've never killed a divine heaven stage mighty figure. Let me take you on. Before Lin had a chance to attack, a burst of hearty laughter erupted, and a snake man flew into the sky with golden flames that were capable of warping and melting space around his body. This was the paramount golden holy flame, a flame of the same caliber as the holy vermilion flame. Heaven-crushing holy flame. The golden sun snake emperor chortled with glee as he unleashed a heaven-crushing technique that he had learned from the heaven-crushing sect. He had wanted to use this technique for a long time, but Heaven Pioneer stage great generals were simply too weak, and he had been killed before he could even unleash it. Now that there was a divine heaven stage opponent here, it was just the perfect opportunity to feed him some attacks. Golden holy flames erupted into the sky, imbued with extremely explosive power, and crashed toward heavenly goddess Lin Yu like a golden sun that threatened to destroy heaven and earth. A heat wave swept forth. Heavenly goddess Lin Yu's long, snowy white hair danced in the wind, but her slender body remained as still as a pine tree. A golden divine halo suddenly appeared around her right wrist. Power of metal. Heavenly goddess Lin Yu spoke in an indifferent voice. A mighty power descended upon her from the heavens. She clenched her fists tightly before crashing them toward the golden sun. Bam! The mighty power of the heavens imbued her fist with the power of heaven-crushing true intent. The golden sun, which was imbued with heaven-crushing true intent, was as fragile as a piece of paper in the face of this mighty fist, and it instantly exploded before disappearing. The golden sun snake emperor's pupils contracted drastically, and he didn't even have a chance to do anything before that burst of power crashed into his body, shattering his protective holy flames before crashing into his abdomen. This was an indescribable power in its purest form. Boom! Bones exploded, and flesh and blood flew through the air. The golden sun snake emperor's upper body had been completely pulverized. Only the two halves of his upper body remained, and all of his internal organs and bones had been pulverized. His snake tail trembled violently as an expression of incredulity appeared on his face. The golden sun snake emperor fell from the sky like a dead snake after just one exchange. He had envisioned himself being defeated after a fierce battle. However, never would he have thought that he would be half dead from a single punch. Wasn't the heaven-crushing techniques supposed to be able to repress the power of the heavenly human tribe? Chapter 1533. All of the living beings present let loose cries of surprise upon seeing that the golden sun snake emperor had been insta-killed by heavenly goddess Lin Yu. In their eyes, Tao integration stage super mighty figures were already at the pinnacle of the world. However, he was unable to even take a single punch from heavenly goddess Lin Yu. This was simply too shocking. However, heavenly goddess Lin Yu was still a little displeased. He didn't die? Looks like my power is still being suppressed too much. The golden sun snake emperor almost pissed himself upon hearing this. So, this heavenly goddess was trying to insta-kill him? That was way too king scary. The golden sun snake emperor's body began to tremble uncontrollably at the sight of heavenly goddess Lin Yu's attempt to unleash another punch. However, just as she was about to unleash another punch, a golden sword fell from the heavens directly toward heavenly goddess Lin Yu's head, and it was imbued with an extremely powerful heaven-crushing intent. As a super mighty figure at the Tao integration pinnacle stage, Black Spirit Snake's attack was able to make heaven and earth tremor violently. The golden sword projection pierced through the heavens, and it was on a whole new level compared to the Golden Sun Snake Emperor's previous attack. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's expression also became quite grave. The divine halo on her right hand glowed with a scintillating light, and an even more terrifying power descended from the heavens. Borrowing the power of the heavens was one of the most common methods used by the heavenly human tribe in battle. However, a white figure suddenly flashed through the air above Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu. This was none other than White Spirit Snake with her delicate features and graceful figure. She wielded her yin and yang dual swords, which transformed into sharp arcs that instantly sliced through yin and yang. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu was astonished to discover that the power descending from the heavens had been sliced apart by White Spirit Snake's sword projection. How'd she do that? This wasn't a heaven-crushing technique. It was also at this moment that Black Spirit Snake's sword projection fell. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu had no choice but to meet the sword projection with her fist. A resounding boom erupted. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's fist was slightly lacerated by the sword projection, from which white blood flowed. Black Spirit Snake's sword projection was also instantly torn apart, and her body hurtled back as if it had been struck by a sledgehammer as blood trickled from the corners of her lips. The sisters' tacit cooperation actually fell into a disadvantageous position. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu clenched her left hand tightly, and another golden divine halo appeared around her wrist. She said faintly, "Hurry up." The golden divine ring suddenly turned white. In that instant, the heavenly god's aura skyrocketed again. White Spirit Snake descended from the sky and brandished her twin blades, creating a flawless net of sword intent. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu looked at the oncoming White Spirit Snake, and her body suddenly flashed before instantly disappearing. The countless sword projections pierced through Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's afterimage, but they lost sight of her true target. White Spirit Snake's expression shifted slightly upon seeing this, and she quickly sidestepped in an attempt to evade something. However, the attacker was simply too fast for her to evade in time. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's speed had already transcended beyond the Tao integration stage. Right at this moment, the Celestial Arch suddenly appeared behind White Spirit Snake before spreading open his arms. Heavenly Compendium. Countless pitch-black runes mysteriously floated in the air and suddenly enveloped the two of them, forming an indestructible barrier that faintly released the power of the Heavenly Tao. This was a power that was extremely similar to Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's. She was using the power of the heavens to oppose the heavens. Bam! An extremely ferocious collision suddenly took place. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's tall and slender figure appeared before them, and her fist pressed tightly against the barrier. The runic barrier tremored violently, but did not crack open. Oh! A hint of surprise flashed through Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's eyes. To think that there is someone in this world who can use their own Tao to borrow the true power of the heavens. She looked at the Celestial Arch with a serious expression for the first time, as if she was trying to see through him. At this moment, a crescent moon imbued with heaven-crushing intent suddenly flew toward them from behind at an extremely fast speed. A divine halo also appeared around Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's slender waist. It was blue in color, and it exuded boundless power like the boundless ocean. Blue defense. A clear and pleasant voice sounded. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's entire body was suddenly enshrouded by a blue membrane. The crescent moon imbued with extreme sharpness struck the membrane behind her, but it was as if it had fallen into a boundless ocean, and its power was instantly erased. Su Qinyun's assassination attempt had failed, and Lin's expression shifted again upon seeing this. Heavenly Goddess Lin, you had summoned 3 divine halos? Did each divine halo correspond to a terrifying ability? In all honesty, these divine halos were very similar to the divine halos of the heavenly gods, but they were also slightly different. They didn't seem to be as pure, but they were still extremely terrifying. The quality was a little lacking, but there were a lot of them. Xiao Hong summoned a heaven-crushing sun, which descended from the sky. Its dazzling light made almost all living beings feel as if they had been blinded by a vast expanse of white. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu remained unfazed. This attack was not going to be able to break through her defenses anyway. She looked up ahead before unleashing another fist toward the celestial Thearcha's heavenly compendium. However, it was also at this moment that an extremely beautiful little fairy in a green dress used spatial skipping to appear nearby. There was a divine symbol outlined by golden lines on her forehead, and her aura was ethereal and unfathomable, as if she had transcended to another level. She put her palms together before spreading them open slightly, and there was a chaotic, twisted ball between them. It had no fixed shape. It was like an abyssal black hole, but it was also as dazzling as the sun. Light and darkness intertwined, imbuing it with the power of life and destruction. Chaotic heaven-crushing ball. Tina extended her hands, and the chaotic heaven-crushing ball instantly flashed toward Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu was struck by a sense of danger for the first time. The Golden Sun Snake Emperor, Su Qinyun, Xiao Hong, and the others had only attained relatively basic heaven-crushing techniques, which she didn't have any interest in. However, the heaven-crushing technique she was facing this time was an extremely profound one. She even had the feeling that if she could improve this spell technique to the next level, it really would be able to blast a hole in the heavens. The chaotic heaven-crushing ball crashed into Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's barrier. At this moment, the defense formed by the blue divine ring finally began to tremble violently. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's expression shifted slightly, and the divine halo around her waist glowed with a scintillating divine light as she increased her defenses. However, it was also at this moment that Bai Ling's cannon began to charge. This was the heaven-crushing cannon that had punctured the ancient Dragon Empress defenses in one shot, and it was so terrifying that the ancient Dragon Empress was beginning to doubt her own existence. Bai Ling had refrained from blasting Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu, as she was too fast to aim at. Now that Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu had paused for a split second, it was the perfect timed strike. Boom! Heaven and earth tremored violently. Cannon fire roared forth, tearing through space and soaring into the sky, leaving a dazzling trail in its wake. A terrifying sense of danger welled up again. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's heart jolted. At this moment, the heaven-crushing cannon had already crashed heavily into her defensive barrier. It was then punctured. Chapter 1534. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu had never thought that her defenses would be broken by a machine. But when the artillery fire directly blew off a section of her slender waist, she finally realized the true terror of the enemy. She had underestimated the opponents before her. At this time, Tina's chaotic heaven-crushing orb also exploded. An earth-shattering explosion was accompanied by the spread of chaotic energy. Black and white, two completely different energies, covered the sky. They fused and tore at each other, and then they swept madly towards the surroundings and destroyed everything. They seemed as if they wanted to completely swallow the sky. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's body was also completely engulfed by the explosion. Even the celestial Thearcha's compendium of heavens was struck by the shockwave, and cracks began to appear on its surface. One could imagine just how terrifying Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu was at the center of the explosion. Is this really a spell technique unleashed by a fairy at the Return to Void pinnacle stage? The celestial Arch was astonished as he stumbled back in retreat. He was sure that the vast majority of Dao integration stage super mighty figures wouldn't be able to unleash such a terrifying heaven-crushing technique. She's in Lin's beast pet. What's so strange about that? White Spirit Snake retreated as she whipped her long and slender tail. The celestial Arch couldn't help but grimace. What did Lin's pet beast have to do with his heaven-crushing technique? Can you not blindly worship me? However, when the Sky Emperor thought about it carefully, he was terrified. And Lin was inextricably linked to the heavens. Not only that, but his beast pets and friends also possessed extremely terrifying heaven-crushing techniques. It felt like the 4-9 Immortal sect was like a second heaven-crushing sect. Not only were they extremely powerful, but they also had limitless potential. The energy had yet to dissipate. Suddenly, a hole appeared in the energy of the explosion. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu flew out from the explosion, and her elegant dress was almost completely torn apart, revealing her flawless body. However, her dress quickly solidified again, as if nothing had happened. However, her angry expression and somewhat chaotic aura had already betrayed her. All creatures knew that she really was injured, moreover angry. The three divine halos shone with dazzling light at the same time as they quickly revolved. Power of metal, speed of white, and defense of blue were pushed to their limits. Whoosh! Heavenly Goddess Lin, you disappeared on the spot again. Tina's expression changed drastically as she flapped her wings and used spatial skipping to escape. However, she had only retreated several kilometers when she abruptly discovered that Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu had already appeared before her with a ruthless expression on her face. Her fist had already landed. It was extremely fast, and the heavenly might contained within it was unstoppable. The Tao integration stage Golden Sun Snake Emperor was already on the brink of death after just one punch from her. So what would happen to this return of Void Stage Fairy? In that instant, Tina felt as if she had nowhere to run. However, in the blink of an eye, a bolt of lightning tore through space, and it seemed to have predicted that Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu would attack like this, and it descended upon her head with unerring accuracy. Both the angle and the timing were impeccable. What was most astonishing to Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu was that this bolt of lightning was imbued with the purest will, as if it were going to tear through all things. This was the will of the heavens, the power of the heavenly lightning god. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's reaction speed was extremely terrifying after being enhanced by her speed divine halo, and she was able to reduce her speed and turn her head in the process. The dazzling bolt of golden void lightning brushed past her cheek, leaving a charred mark on her face. Tina immediately unleashed her spatial skipping again to hurtle back in retreat. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu turned to stare at the man in the distance with her bright and piercing eyes. The man who had refused her invitation to befriend him now had a golden lightning robe over his body, and lightning crackled and crackled all over his body. The lightning divine halo revolved incessantly above his head, exuding a paramount might. This time, both the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army and the Spirit Beast Tribe United Army were convinced that Lin really could use the power of the heavenly gods. After all, not just anyone could unleash such a paramount and regal aura, which was even purer and more regal than that of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. You're finally using this power. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu extended a slender hand and gently brushed it over the charred marks on her face, upon which her injuries were completely healed. Come on, let's see whose divine halo is more powerful. And Lin chuckled lightly as his body gradually rose into the air. Countless bolts of lightning surged around his body, roaring and unleashing surging divine might. Each and every bolt of lightning struck one with an extremely terrifying feeling. If all of them were to fall at the same time, it would most likely be the equivalent of doomsday. He had never unleashed the full power of the heavenly gods in front of anyone before. This was the first time. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu was quite surprised, but there was still no fear on her face. She was already prepared for this, and she tapped her feet lightly into the air, upon which ripples swept forth. Whoosh! Whoosh! Another two divine halos appeared. They appeared around Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's bare feet, where they revolved incessantly in a ring shape. The purple divine light was imbued with a peculiar divine might, and Lin was suddenly struck by a sense of unease. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu now had 5 divine halos, and her aura soared explosively once again, striking Lin with a sense of asphyxiation, as if he were facing the might of 5 heavenly gods at once. The atmosphere became more and more tense, and it was as if an earth-shattering battle were about to erupt. And Lin bowed slightly, and the lightning revolving around his body bared its menacing claws. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's eyes narrowed slightly, and the 5 divine halos around her body glowed with scintillating light. She was just about to spring into action when her expression abruptly shifted, and she immediately turned and flew toward the south. Lin was just holding his breath when his opponent, who had been brimming with confidence a moment ago, suddenly turned tail and ran. "Don't run," he faltered momentarily before immediately giving chase. Dazzling golden light erupted from Lin's body as he flew, and he merged into a bolt of golden void lightning before flying toward heavenly goddess Linyu like a bolt of lightning. The celestial arch, black spirit snake, and the others were also given a fright upon seeing this. Never would they have thought that heavenly goddess Linyu, who had threatened to destroy them in 1 minute, would suddenly flee without any hesitation. They hesitated for less than a second before also giving chase after Lin. However, how could Tao integration stage super mighty figures compare to heavenly goddess Linyu? Setting aside them, even Lin, who had unleashed his heavenly lightning transformation technique, was unable to catch up to heavenly goddess Linyu, who had a divine halo beneath her feet. Tens of thousands of kilometers away, a bolt of golden void lightning dissipated to reveal a panting man. And Lin was a little bewildered as he looked on at the disappearing heavenly goddess Linyu. Why was she running? Why did she suddenly run? Am I that scary? Chapter 1535. It was no wonder that Lin would be so dumbstruck. He didn't even know if he could defeat heavenly goddess Linyu. However, his opponent had backed down and fled without even putting up a fight. That was way too absurd. The celestial arch, black spirit snake, white spirit snake, and the others also caught up, and they all stopped with confusion on their faces upon seeing that even Lin was unable to catch up to her. Did heavenly goddess Linyu detect some sort of danger? Black spirit snake's brows furrowed. Isn't that obvious? He must have realized that he couldn't defeat Seniorin, so he ran away. White spirit snake grinned as she spoke. Her eyes shone brightly, and there was a mysterious sense of confidence in her eyes. And Lin turned to the two beautiful snake women, and his divine halo disappeared as he clasped his hands behind his back with a faint smile on his face. That is indeed the case. Black spirit snake rolled her eyes while white spirit snake wore a dainty smile. The celestial thearch's face convulsed, and he cleared his throat. Heavenly goddess Lin, you must have fled for some unknown reason, or perhaps there is something that could threaten her life. In any case, this is a good thing for us. And Lin carefully examined himself. What was so bad *SS about him that he could strike such fear into heavenly goddess Linyu's heart? That level of fear was something that could only be achieved with crushing power. He thought about it for a long time, and it seemed like only when he was on the brink of death would he be able to unleash a power that struck fear into heavenly goddess Linyu's heart. But surely heavenly goddess Lin, you wasn't that powerful? She could even see the system's hidden buff mystic technique. That was impossible. Even the heavenly gods didn't know about this. So how could a heavenly human tribe, heavenly god, know about it? And Lin was more and more perplexed the more he thought about it. Meanwhile, 5,000 kilometers away from the heavenly snake lightning lake, the ancient dragon empress heaved a forlorn sigh. We were too slow again. Raphaela's brows furrowed with an aggrieved expression. It's all my fault, that's enough. She's very sensitive, so we wouldn't be able to catch her even if we were nearby. Chen still wore a nonchalant expression. On the contrary, having Lin and the others battle against divine heaven stage heavenly humans is beneficial to their growth, so it's not a bad idea. Raphael was slightly startled. Am I being comforted? She blinked her azure blue eyes and looked at the youth beside her. She suddenly felt that the youth was very considerate and gentle. Although his expression was a little indifferent, it made her feel even more. What do we do now? The ancient dragon empress asked. Keep hiding. Don't go too far this time, Chun-Shin said. Thus, the three of them continued to stay close to the extermination team. As a hidden trump card, they were still very conscious. Even if this trump card was very likely to be discovered by the enemy, they still had to pretend that they didn't know. Heavenly Snake Lightning Lake Battlefield. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army experienced a journey from heaven to hell, then from hell to heaven, and then back to hell again. It was like riding a roller coaster. Just a minute ago, He had said that he would kill all the experts on the field within a minute. The next minute, he was out of sight. Was he a fake heavenly god? All of the heavenly human tribe, powerful beings, were struck by the urge to throw up blood. As for the blood tribe and void spirit tribe, they couldn't help but curse with grief and indignation. They had never seen such a shameless person before. The big shots came and went like the wind. How were they going to survive? The Phoenix was still maintaining the massive divine flame cage, which even returned to void stage mighty figures were unable to forcibly break through. Battle erupted once again. The scales of victory were undoubtedly tipping in the Spirit Lake Realm United Army's favor. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army had no choice but to fight to the death. Their most powerful beings were severely wounded, so they were basically at the mercy of the enemy. However, even a rabbit would bite when it was cornered, and casualties were unavoidable for the Spirit Lake Realm United Army. However, all of this was completely reversed after the return of Enlin, Black Spirit Snake, White Spirit Snake, and the Celestial Arch. The Tao integration stage, super mighty figures, made all of the living beings on the ground experience what it meant to be able to move mountains and fill oceans. Each and every one of their attacks was like a doomsday disaster. Black Spirit Snake charged through the air with her divine sword in hand. Golden sword projections flashed through the air as if she were invincible. White Spirit Snake's body was graceful, and her yin and yang dual swords were like the sun and the moon. Each and every time she leaped through the air, her sword intent would expand to a radius of close to 10 kilometers, evading all of her allies with unerring accuracy before sealing all of her enemies in ice or incinerating them. The Celestial Arch walked through the battlefield, and all of the enemies he passed by would explode on the spot as they were unable to withstand his terrifying might. In contrast, the Spirit Lake Realm United Army felt as if they were bathing in a warm spring breeze. They felt like all of their injuries had healed significantly at the sight of the Celestial Thearcha's warm smile, and their hearts were throbbing with excitement. And Lin found the Heavenly Human Tribe general who had exposed his identity to Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu and unleashed a Heavenly Ghost Palm upon him. The Heavenly Ghost Palm was a spell technique that he had attained stage 2 of an Yin-type cultivation method after living a miserable life as a blade of grass in a strange space. It was imbued with extremely powerful Yin-type power and was constructed from the resentment of billions of vengeful ghosts. When unleashed at full power, it could inflict excruciating agony upon one's opponent. As one's power grew, they could even unleash the power of extreme evil in the river of time to inflict extreme evil pain on their opponents. That soul-piercing stage, General dared to expose Enlin's identity, so Enlin naturally had to show him the power of the Heavenly Ghost Palm. Thus, the Heavenly Human Tribe General's heart-wrenching wails erupted throughout heaven and earth. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that his bragging would be remembered by a mighty figure like Enlin, and that Enlin would come back after a fierce battle to unleash the most vicious spell technique on him. Was this F** king necessary? Where was his dignity and dignity? The Heavenly Human Tribe General experienced what it truly meant to be a living hell. His blood-curdling wails and tragic appearance sent chills running down the spines of the surrounding Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. Even the Spirit Lake Realm United Army was given a fright, and all of them had a new impression of Enlin. This was a man who held grudges, so they definitely couldn't afford to mess with him. The battle was still ongoing, but there was no longer any doubt as to who would emerge victorious. Soon, the Heavenly Snake Lightning Lake battle concluded with the complete annihilation of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. On the battlefield, the bodies of Heavenly Human Tribe, Void Spirit Tribe, and Blood Tribe cultivators littered the ground, creating rivers of blood. After slaying the final enemy, the Spirit Lake Realm United Army looked around at the empty battlefield with a dazed expression. Aside from the god-engulfing skeleton, all of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army had perished on the battlefield. This was the first time the Spirit Lake Realm United Army had achieved such a devastating victory in the past few decades. Chapter 1536. Millions of spirit beasts turned their eyes toward the white-robed man and the dozen or so other powerful beings who had descended from the sky. If it weren't for the fact that they had arrived at the most critical moment and turned the tables with absolute power, there was no way that they would have been able to secure such a complete victory. This was a pleasant surprise that they would never have dreamed of, and it was the most exciting ray of hope that they had ever seen in the past several decades of despair. Did you hear? And Lynn said that their team is called the Extermination Team. Extermination Team? What a stingy name. Isn't it the Heaven Extermination Team? As long as we get it. This team is the epitome of victory. All of their members are so extraordinarily powerful. The 4-9 Immortal Sect really is the #1 sect in the Kingdom of the 9 States. Apparently, this team was formed to wipe out the entire Heavenly Human Tribe army on the Southern Front. Gasp! What a bad *SS mission. All of the spirit beasts turned to Enlin and the others with reverence in their eyes. Enlin's team was very powerful, to the extent that they had even managed to force one of the most powerful beings in the Heavenly Human Tribe, Heavenly Goddess Linyu, into retreat. To describe it in the cultivation world, it would be described as terrifying, powerful, mysterious, and full of hope. These were the impressions that all of the spirit beasts had toward the extermination team. Enlin, Su Xiaolan, the Celestial Arch, the Phoenix, Tina, Bailing, Xinyuan Cheng, and the others had become the most dazzling stars in the eyes of the spirit beasts, and they were greeted or bowed to wherever they went. Enlin gathered all of the extermination team members together before swallowing immortal pills. This was a joyous occasion. After the battle, they had to recover from their injuries and recover their energy as quickly as possible. They were about to embark on an even more intense battle. The half-dead Golden Sun Snake Emperor had been handed over to by Ling Black Spirit Snake and White Spirit Snake, made their way to Enlin's side before appraising him with curiosity. Not only them, but even the Fist Sage and the other returned Void Stage mighty figures also made their way over to join in on the fun. Senior Enlin, I knew you weren't dead. White Spirit Snake ran over to Enlin with a vibrant smile on her face before giving him an elated hug. A fragrant scent wafted over, and a warm jade filled his chest. Enlin didn't expect that White Spirit Snake would still treat him warmly and respectfully even after so many years had passed. She was still the same as before. He did not dare to hug her greedily. He symbolically patted her slender waist and separated from her, just like an old friend who had not seen each other for a long time. Little by, the rate at which your cultivation base is rising is quite frightening, said Enlin with a smile. White Spirit Snake's eyes were clear and bright, and she replied in a nonchalant manner, It's all because of some opportunities. However, I'm a reincarnated being, so I still have my original Tao and observations, so I'm able to progress faster. Enlin's lips twitched involuntarily. When you say a little faster, are you referring to jumping from the Tao body stage to the Tao integration pinnacle stage in 100 years? All right, let's not talk about cultivation for now. A huge golden sword suddenly appeared between Enlin and White Spirit Snake. The tall and slender Black Spirit Snake in a black dress interjected in a domineering manner. She turned to Enlin with a "don't seduce my little sister" expression. Why did you guys suddenly come here? What happened to the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army in the Kingdom of the 9 States? The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army of over 20 million has been completely wiped out aside from Emperor Yi Deng, and Lin replied in a cold voice. Black Spirit Snake and White Spirit Snake both drew sharp intakes of breath with astonishment etched on their faces. All of the other returned to Void Stage mighty figures' mouths, gaped open in shock. Completely wiped out? The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army that bypassed us to attack the Kingdom of the 9 States was also wiped out. Empress Helen, Emperor Bei Xing, and a large number of Heavenly Human Tribe great generals and generals were all wiped out? My God! All of the mighty figures present exclaimed in shock as they turned to Enlin and the others with incredulity in their eyes. The extermination team was even more terrifying than they had imagined. The drastic changes in the top-tier combat prowess of both sides had undoubtedly turned the entire situation around. The fifth sage was already getting quite excited. So that means we've already wiped out the vast majority of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the Southern Front. This is an unprecedented victory. This is going to rock the entire continent. He could already imagine what kind of storm it would set off in the continent when the news of the battle spread. When that time came, the extermination team, no, the name of the 4-9 immortal sect, would be renowned across the entire continent. Now that the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army has been wiped out, what are you going to do next, Senior and Lin? Are you going to provide reinforcements on the other fronts? White Spirit Snake asked, and Lin shook his head. We still have enemies to take care of, right? I'm going to continue onward. Continue onward? White Spirit Snake couldn't help but let loose a cry of surprise as she clasped her hand over her mouth, as if a thought had occurred to her. You're saying you're going to fight your way to the Southern Heavenly Gate? And Lin chuckled. Of course. My team is the extermination team, and we're not going to stop here. How can we turn back now? All of the mighty figures were astonished again. So the extermination team wasn't satisfied after wiping out almost all of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. They were going to attack the Heavenly Gate on the Southern Front. Countless Spirit Beast Tribe mighty figures turned to the extermination team with even more reverence in their eyes. Some of them even volunteered to join the extermination team. In reality, they had already been pummeled to the core. Even though they knew that Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu and a Heavenly God embodiment of the Heavenly Tao were there, they were still not scared. All of them knew that this was the only way to end this war. White Spirit Snake also volunteered with excitement. Black Spirit Snake hesitated momentarily before also asking if she could join the extermination team. And Lin was naturally not going to refuse the assistance of a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. As the team leader, he was very elated to accept the two beautiful snake women. He also reluctantly accepted the bald man's application. The fifth sage had beaten him up in the past, so Lin was going to give him a spot on the extermination team no matter what. As for the severely wounded Golden Sun Snake Emperor and all of the other Spirit Beast Tribe mighty figures who wanted to join, Black Spirit Snake ordered them to stay at the Spirit Lake realm in case of any mishaps. And Lin was already very happy and satisfied to be able to recruit two powerful snake maidens. He didn't dare to ask for anything more. As such, his extermination team had become more powerful, and they had become a lot more powerful. White Spirit Snake was still jabbering away beside him, asking Lin about the past 100 years. And Lin had no choice but to provide a concise explanation. So on so. White Spirit Snake let loose a string of cries of surprise. Black Spirit Snake couldn't help but take a few extra glances at Lin. The Spirit Beast Tribe and the human race were very friendly, and the relationship between Black Spirit Snake and Lin had also eased significantly. Perhaps this was due to the fact that they shared a common enemy and had fought alongside one another. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of knocking suddenly erupted from the coffin behind Lin. Chapter 1537. Lin was given a fright upon hearing this, and he immediately recalled that Xiaolan was still in the coffin. Now that Xiaolan had knocked on the coffin door, he naturally understood what was going on and immediately opened the coffin door. Su Xiaolan opened her eyes and raised her arms in the air. Lin understood what she meant, and he gently helped her up with a warm smile on his face. You're awake, Xiaolan? Su Xiaolan was still feeble, and she looked around at the battlefield with curiosity in her eyes. Is the battle already over? Lin nodded. That's right. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army has already been defeated. Tina chimed in with excitement. Even the divine heaven stage, Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu was forced into retreat by us. Su Xiaolan stared at Lin with astonishment on her face. What did I miss? Lin hurriedly explained what had happened to the woman. He told her about how Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu had declared that she would be able to defeat them in a minute, as well as how Lin had scared Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu away with a threatening aura. Su Xiaolan was quite astonished as she listened. She would automatically filter out Lin's words, such as Lin using his threatening aura to scare Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu away. Then, she would roughly reconstruct the battle that had taken place. It had to be said that heavenly goddess Lin, you still gave her an unfathomable image. Are we still going to continue? Su Xiaolan asked, and Lin nodded with a firm expression. Yes. He looked at Su Xiaolan's pale and feeble features. I'll go with you, Su Xiaolan interjected. A warm smile appeared on Lin's face. Then you should focus on recovering first. The Blood Soul Jade Coffin, the recovery power of the Immortal Pill, and the astonishing recovery power of Su Xiaolan's Vermilion Bird bloodline combined to allow her to recover her strength very quickly. However, Lin's brows were still furrowed slightly. He used his divine inspection technique to appraise Su Xiaolan's body, and he discovered that the after effects of using the buff spell technique had still surfaced. Her meridians had become extremely frail, and her consciousness was also quite feeble. Furthermore, both of these were recovering very slowly. After the meridians became brittle, any changes would affect the nerves of the entire body. Xiaolan must be in a lot of pain right now, but she's just not showing it. The simple repairs were over, and Lin put Su Xiaolan back into the coffin and carried it on his back. The Celestial Arch, Black Spirit Snake, White Spirit Snake, the Phoenix, Tina, Bailing, and the Fist Sage all stood up with battle intent burning in their eyes. All of the spirit beasts turned to look at the dozen or so beings flying toward the Phoenix's back with scorching reverence and yearning in their eyes. They knew that this legendary team was going to stir up some trouble again. Extermination Team, onward! And Lin pointed toward the south as he spoke in a heroic voice. Chirp! The Phoenix also let loose a heroic cry. It spread open its wings, upon which its fiery wings glowed with dazzling light, and it rose into the air before flying toward the south like a flaming streak of light. All of the spirit beasts could see a crimson streak of light flashing through the sky, as if it were the light of hope that extended all the way to the end of the heavens. The heavenly human tribe on the southern front had appeared from the border of the southern heavenly wing nation in the southernmost part of the Taichu continent. Apparently, there was a gargantuan heavenly gate there, which was eternal and impenetrable to Tao integration stage powers. The gate connected the two worlds, and the heavenly human tribe was most likely situated within it. Not only was the objective of Lin's extermination team to destroy the enemy forces, but they also had to find a way to destroy their crystal. In other words, they had to destroy the enemy's heavenly gate. Only by doing that could they live up to their title as the extermination team. Oh, there's a heavenly human tribe base here. And Lin looked down to discover a grand fortress, within which there were many heavenly human tribe powerful beings walking about. The Phoenix let loose a chirp before opening its mouth to blast forth a massive fireball. The massive fireball fell from the sky like a meteorite. Some of the heavenly human tribe, living beings within the heavenly human tribe base, immediately sounded the alarm upon seeing this. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Over 10,000 heavenly human tribe powerful beings hurriedly injected their power into the defensive spell formation. The spell formation enshrouded an area of close to 10 kilometers in radius, protecting the entire base. However, when they raised their heads and saw the huge fireball that was large enough to cover the sky, falling like a falling sun, despair appeared on their faces. Is this a joke? Which Tao integration stage, super mighty figure came all the way here to mess with us? Some of the heavenly human tribe powerful beings were on the verge of tears. An attack from a Tao integration stage mythological beast was extremely terrifying. The massive fireball crashed through the heavenly human tribe base's spell formation in an extremely violent manner, upon which destructive power erupted forth, incinerating all things between heaven and earth as a spectacular mushroom cloud erupted from the ground. The divine flame explosion instantly engulfed the heavenly human tribe base, incinerating over 10,000 heavenly human tribe powerful beings into ashes. Awesome. Xin Yuan Cheng's eyes glowed with excitement, and Lin shot a glance at Big Brother Cheng and repressed his urge to grumble. The Phoenix let out a cry, but it didn't stop flapping its wings as it continued to fly south. The heavenly human tribe powerful beings didn't even have a right to make the phoenix pause for a moment. It was as if it had merely spat on the ground, and the heavenly human tribe base had been destroyed 1 hour later. A vast expanse of lush green land appeared before their eyes. Towering trees grew on the ground, as if they were taller than anyone else. Each tree was taller than the last, growing with all their might. Trees over 100 meters tall could be seen everywhere, and there were many sky trees over 1,000 meters tall as well. There were even super sky trees over 1,000 meters tall, as well as divine trees over 10,000 meters tall. All of them competed with one another in this vast expanse of lush greenery. As for the saying that the tallest tree in the forest would attract the most wind, that didn't apply at all here. The taller the tree, the safer it would be. Powerful birds all liked to perch on tall trees, as this represented their status, and at the same time, they protected the tree. As for the sun tree, there were 3 Tao integration stage mythological beasts stationed there, which represented their supreme status. If anyone tried to destroy the sun tree, they would most likely be executed several dozen times over. This is the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation. A reminiscent expression appeared on Lin's face. Thinking back, he had traveled around the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation with Shui Zhantian, and he had encountered the adorable vermilion bird princess, the guardian of the sun tree, Yi Li, and he had also obtained the core inheritances of the eternal sun god, the Kuan Peng, and the vermilion bird princess. When the heavenly human tribe descended upon this world with the will of the heavens, the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation, which was closest to the Southern Heavenly Gate, chose not to side with the heavenly human tribe. Instead, they chose to remain neutral. This was good news for Lin. At the very least, he didn't have to face his old friends. At this moment, in the central region of the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation, a gargantuan divine tree that extended into the clouds with no end in sight stood on the ground. On the 8th level of the sun tree, which was enshrouded in white mist, this place was deathly silent, and there were stars twinkling within the darkness. Black leaves rustled in the wind. A young woman in a colorful dress was meditating when she suddenly opened her bright eyes. There are Tao integration stage super mighty figures in the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation. Holy F***CK. So many? The young woman in a colorful dress abruptly stood up with astonishment etched on her face. Are they here to destroy our home? Chapter 1538. This beautiful woman in a colorful dress was one of the 3 Tao integration stage mighty figures of the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation Sun Tree, the 9-color divine vermilion bird. Xiao Ke, don't panic. At this moment, a gentle voice suddenly sounded. In front of the multicolor-clothed girl was a giant divine bird. It looked like an eagle. Its feathers were white and flawless, and its eyes were golden. There were 2 pairs of wings on its back, and 4 slender legs grew from its abdomen. From afar, it looked like a ferocious beast running on the ground, but it was actually a bird, and it was the most powerful being in the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation, the mythological beast, the eternal sun god. Why aren't you panicking? There are 5 Tao integration stage puppets. The vermilion bird princess spread open her palm and extended her 5 slender fingers in an exaggerated manner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going up the mountain to hunt the tiger. Anyone who saw 5 Tao integration stage super mighty figures trespassing on the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation's territory without warning would be panicked and uneasy. After all, no top-tier power on the Tai Chu continent would dare to disregard 5 Tao integration stage super mighty figures. The eternal sun god, on the other hand, looked toward the north with a leisurely smile. We're not their target. Not us. The vermilion bird princess faltered momentarily before her mouth gaped open in astonishment. Could it be that their target is the gate in the south? The eternal sun god smiled non-committally. Where did all these Tao integration stage super mighty figures come from? Where did he get the guts to do that? The vermilion bird princess was still in disbelief. Perhaps this is the backup plan of a god of creation, or perhaps the kingdom of the 9 states, or even the heaven-crushing forces are going all out. Who knows? The eternal sun god's eyes lit up. All I know is that we're in for a good show. 5 DAO integration stage, super mighty figures were more than enough to dominate an entire realm. However, the heavenly human tribe was no pushover. Heavenly goddess Lin Yu was a divine heaven stage heavenly goddess and an unknown heavenly god. No living being had ever approached the southern heavenly gate, so no one knew what lay beyond the southern heavenly gate. It was conceivable that this would be an earth-shattering duel. The Vermilion Bird Princess had clearly thought of this as well, and she hummed a little tune as she flew through the air. "Little sparrow, what are you trying to do?" The eternal sun god's expression changed. "Of course I have to spectate such a thrilling battle." The Vermilion Bird Princess giggled before disappearing as a streak of 9-colored light. The eternal sun god opened its mouth to try and dissuade the 9-color divine vermilion bird, but decided against it in the end when it thought about the 9-color divine vermilion bird's personality. At the top of the sun tree, a regal and gorgeous divine bird flew through the air toward the south. Countless birds lowered their proud heads at the sight of that gorgeous, slender, and graceful figure, as if they were bowing to her. The 9-color divine vermilion bird was the most beautiful bird in the world. Any proud bird that saw her would be struck by a sense of inferiority, and they would willingly lower their heads to her. This was very rare in such a proud race. All of the birds sent off the 9-color divine vermilion bird in a respectful manner. "Phew! The 9-color divine vermilion bird has left. What a beautiful back that I yearn for. I can't get enough of it no matter how many times I look at it. I wonder where Master Divine Vermilion Bird is going. The South is an ominous place. Will it be dangerous for her to go there? She's a mythological beast. It's none of your business whether she's going to be in danger or not." All of the birds discussed spiritedly among themselves. They lived in the mountains and forests, and even though an unprecedented war had erupted across the Taichu continent, they were still able to stay out of it and enjoy themselves. However, all of the birds didn't even get a chance to heave a sigh of relief. All of a sudden, an extremely terrifying aura swept toward them from afar. The temperature of heaven and earth inexplicably rose by quite a bit. Flames spread through the sky like a red carpet, and a figure that was the envy of all the birds appeared. Divine flames flashed through the air, and a phoenix appeared. Its indescribable grandeur and beauty had all of the birds entranced. A phoenix. It's a purebred phoenix. My God, that's a real phoenix mythological beast. Countless birds yelled with scorching excitement in their eyes. In contrast to the admiration and yearning they felt toward the 9-color divine vermilion bird, the phoenix was able to evoke the hidden excitement in their bloodlines, and some of the birds even wanted to follow behind the phoenix. However, in just a few seconds, he was completely out of sight. What does the phoenix's reappearance signify? It feels a little like the phoenix of the 4-9 Immortal sect. Don't be stupid. The phoenix of the 4-9 Immortal sect is currently fighting the heavenly human tribe in the Kingdom of the 9 States. So how could it come here? All of a sudden, their voices faltered. A peculiar silence ensued. No way, it's possible. So the phoenix's target is the southern heavenly gate. Some of the birds had already dropped the fruits in their mouths. Holy F***CK. Bad *SS. This is going to be exciting. All of the birds were extremely excited. At this moment, the phoenix had already arrived at the southern tip of the southern heavenly wing nation. It seemed to be very fond of this place, and it began to let loose melodic cries as if it were singing. For example, this chirp chirp, chirp chirp chirp, and this chirp chirp, chirp, chirp 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 were all extremely moving and pleasant to the ears. This was the first time Lin had heard a phoenix sing, and he closed his eyes and listened with elation. Tina also hummed softly, as if she was also entranced by the beautiful melody. Su Xiaolan lay in her coffin, and she was feeling a little drowsy as she listened to this music. The phoenix hummed a melody before suddenly turning its head and spitting out a burst of scorching divine flames 150 kilometers away. The divine flames fell from the heavens like a crimson bolt of lightning, instantly incinerating a radius of over 50 kilometers into the ground, incinerating everything on the ground. Over 20,000 heavenly human tribe powerful beings had been annihilated. Perhaps they hadn't even seen the phoenix's true body before they were incinerated to death. There was no reason for this, as the disparity in power between the two sides was like an insurmountable chasm. The phoenix had already destroyed a dozen or so heavenly human tribe powerful beings. Due to the fact that they were missing some of their most powerful beings, all of them were annihilated like cannon fodder. Thus, the extermination team continued onward with unstoppable force. All of the birds looked up at the phoenix flying through the sky with curiosity or excitement. As they continued onward, and Lin and the others slowly approached the southernmost part of the southern heavenly wing nation. The earth below them was a vast expanse of yellow and gray. Many of the lush trees had turned yellow or dark gray, as if they were suffering from malnutrition. However, strangely enough, these malnourished trees were filled with a different type of vitality. Their branches and leaves were flourishing, and they were growing taller and taller. The air temperature gradually rose. The setting sun dyed the entire sky red, and the red hue of the earth blended together with the gray hue of the earth, creating a peculiar and austere atmosphere. As far as the eye could see, there was a line between the crimson sky and the dark gray horizon. There was a speck of white light that shone like a star. Chapter 1539. Lin immediately guessed what the speck of white light was upon seeing it. The celestial court had a southern heavenly gate, which was the gate that connected the mortal world to the celestial court. The heavenly human tribe also had a southern heavenly gate, which was the gate that connected the heavenly human tribe territory to the Taichu continent. Thinking about it that way, the two southern heavenly gates seemed to have something in common. Lin suddenly thought back to Monkey Sun, who had once fought his way to the southern heavenly gate. The extermination team was now like Monkey Sun, who had wreaked havoc in the heavenly palace. They were determined to turn the South Heaven Gate upside down and kill all the celestial beings. This was an extremely proud and domineering spirit. In just a single day, they fought from the Kingdom of the Nine States to the Spirit Lake Realm, then from the Spirit Lake Realm to the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation. Over 30 million Heavenly Human Tribe United Army had perished, including hundreds of return to Void Stage Soul Piercing Stage Mighty Figures, a dozen or so Heaven Pioneer Stage Great Generals, and even 3 Tao Integration Stage Mighty Figures had fallen. Wherever the extermination team passed, blood flowed like rivers. They killed gods and Buddhas that stood in their way. They were so sharp that no one could stop them. Gradually, everyone's disposition began to change. After 2 victories, not only were they full of confidence, but even their Tao hearts had become a lot more stable. Battle was the best way to cultivate, and it was also the best way to verify one's own Tao. After 2 extremely high-level and satisfying battles, as well as 3 deaths at the hands of Tao Integration Stage Mighty Figures, many of them were beginning to feel their cultivation bases waver a little, and Lin took a deep breath as he looked at the approaching spot of white light. Everyone, get ready for battle. Everyone drew their weapons at the sight of the spot of white light in the distance. Bai Ling even pulled out a pair of binoculars to look in the direction of the spot of white light. It's just a vast expanse of white. Looks like it's being shielded by some kind of energy. A smile appeared on her face. She was not surprised to hear this, and she silently pulled out a massive cannon from her storage ring before turning to Lin. Should we fire a cannon at them first? Xian Yuan Cheng's eyes lit up with excitement. Let's use cannons to clear a path for the extermination team. That's a good idea. And Lin also found it interesting and nodded lightly. A faint smile appeared on Bai Ling's face as she patted the cannon turret, upon which a complicated white spell formation appeared to activate the cannon. At the same time, the energy within the cannon turret was activated, and the cannon fire became even more fearsome. Everyone could feel the terrifying energy contained within the cannon, and they silently retreated further away. Even though they knew that Bai Ling's control was extremely precise, they still chose to silently back away. This was an instinctive reaction, and it wasn't because they didn't trust Bai Ling. The phoenix let out 2 chirps, appearing somewhat uneasy. Anyone who had a cannon constantly charging up power on their head would feel somewhat apprehensive and afraid. By Ling's cold, mechanical voice sounded. Energy charge complete. Missile camouflage system activated. Trajectory corrected. Target locked on. Error of 1 in 100 million. Prepare to fire. She stretched out her fair and slender palm and gently patted Big Pow's butt. Pa! Boom! An earth-shattering roar echoed throughout the heavens and earth. The cannon fire roared like the most ferocious prehistoric beasts, spewing out energy like the sun. Because of the terrifying recoil, the phoenix's body leaned forward and almost flipped over. The cannon fire was extremely concentrated, and it was imbued with a power that even the celestial Thearcha's heart palpitated with fear as it hurtled through the heavens toward the star-like speck of light on the horizon. The light from the cannon lit up the entire heavenly realm. The celestial Thearch was astonished. The southern heavenly gate was at least tens of thousands of kilometers away, which was far beyond the attack range of a Tao integration stage supermighty figure. However, Bailing's cannon fire was able to strike with extreme accuracy, which was quite astonishing. Furthermore, the cannon fire was also extremely terrifying. At the very least, from the perspective of the most powerful being in the Kingdom of the Nine States, the Celestial Thearch most likely wouldn't be able to survive this cannon fire. Meanwhile, at the southern heavenly gate, a majestic gate exuding an ancient and primordial aura stood between heaven and earth. It was constructed from 2 colorful energy pillars over 1 million feet tall. Outside the pillars were a pair of gargantuan bronze gates, and within the pillars was a boundless white light that was impossible to see through, but it was also extremely alluring, as if it led to another world. The vastly renowned southern heavenly gate of the heavenly human tribe was actually quite simple, but not a single human had dared to set foot on this holy land in the past few decades. Outside the gate was a vast expanse of lush green grass with countless beautiful flowers that were around half the height of a grown man. They swayed gracefully in the night breeze, exuding a silent sense of allure. There were a few pure white houses on the grassland. They were all intricate, simple, and very ordinary, but they were exuding extremely terrifying energy fluctuations. There was a series of heavenly human tribe, powerful beings with extraordinary dispositions moving about within the houses, all of which possessed heaven pioneer stage power. In other words, all of the heavenly human tribe powerful beings here had the power to command the heavenly human tribe united army. The setting sun dyed the entire sky a crimson color. A crimson moon appeared in the sky, complementing the color of the sky. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu was sitting on a lounge chair with a graceful expression. Her golden eyes reflected the light of the setting sun, and she held a lotus-shaped cup in her hand as she sipped on some immortal flower juice. Her pristine features were filled with sorrow. Sigh. She heaved a gentle sigh. It was quite clear that she had a lot on her mind and was feeling a little resentful. Don't think too much. If you have no desires, you will have no worries. A voice that was as warm as smoke sounded. Not far to the left of Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu, there was a man who was also dressed in a cloud and mist robe meditating. The man's eyes were tightly shut, and he made a strange hand seal with his hands. Power was constantly being injected into his body from the heavens above. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's distressed expression did not abate in the slightest upon hearing this. Instead, she was even more depressed. How can I have no desires? I was so humiliated just then. Didn't you see the smug expression on Lin's face when he chased after me? That was the most humiliating thing I've ever done in my life. She was not distressed by the fact that the entire heavenly human tribe united army had been wiped out. Instead, she was feeling extremely humiliated by the situation she had been in. The man shot a glance at Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu. Instead of worrying about that, you should focus on recovering from the backlash you received from the Heavenly Tao. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu raised her left arm upon hearing this. There was a black patch on her wrist that appeared to be rotting, and it was even showing signs of expanding outward. Lin Yu was a perfectionist, but her brows furrowed slightly at the sight of her own inky black wrist. Such a glaring flaw had appeared on a flawless body. It was as if she had OCD. Sigh, what can I do? I can only let time erase all of this. The next time we meet, I'll definitely exact my revenge. A cold light flashed through Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's eyes. Perhaps that day won't be too far away, the man said. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu cocked her head to the side, and her mouth gaped open slightly as she looked up at the sky in the distance with a hint of surprise on her face. There was a burst of terrifying energy hurtling toward them like a meteorite. Chapter 1540. Heavenly Goddess Lin, you didn't think that there would be enemies attacking the southern heavenly gate. It had always been the heavenly human tribe attacking others. Since when did it become someone else's turn to attack the heavenly human tribe? She knew who had done this almost instantly. Aside from those few fearless figures, no one would dare to do something like this. Lin Yu burst into laughter. Do you really think you can do whatever you want at the southern heavenly gate just because you destroyed the heavenly human tribe united army? If you want to die, then don't blame me. At this moment, 9 pillars of white light had already risen into the sky, forming an extremely massive barrier that enshrouded everything within the southern heavenly gate. Cannon blasts crashed into the barrier, immediately following which an earth-shattering explosion erupted. The energy that could destroy heaven and earth was completely released at this moment, annihilating everything it came into contact with. Lightning, flames, molecular destruction, quantum destruction. Outside the southern heavenly gate, the light from the explosion lit up for thousands of kilometers. The Earth within a radius of over 1,000 kilometers was instantly engulfed by terrifying energy. And Lin could see the ball of destructive light that was as dazzling as a massive fireball, even from tens of thousands of kilometers away. It was as if a new sun had suddenly risen up after the sun had set, diluting the crimson hue in the sky significantly. TSK, 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 what a spectacular welcome gift. And Lin wore a wide smile on his face. He's very sincere. Xin Yuancheng was also very excited. Forcibly planting a little sun like this is all heresy, Xiao Hong said in her sweet voice. I wonder if they're still alive. It would be great if the southern heavenly gate was destroyed as well. Woof! Dabai stuck out his tongue with anticipation on his face. The extermination team admired the exploding sun in the sky as they grumbled. However, a disappointed expression suddenly appeared on Bai Ling's face. It's been blocked. They have an extremely powerful spell formation that completely blocked our attack. Everyone's expression shifted upon hearing this. Bai Ling's cannon had already exceeded the Dao integration stage in terms of power, but it had still been blocked. Just how powerful was their enemy's spell formation? Even though they were a little nervous, they weren't all that surprised. If the final boss couldn't even take a single cannon blast from Bai Ling, then it wouldn't have been able to destroy the heavenly human tribe after fighting for several decades. The phoenix continued to fly in the direction of the southern heavenly gate. It glanced fearfully at the tall and beautiful woman in white on its back. If the woman's cannon had accidentally hit it, would it have died? When it thought of this, it couldn't help but shiver. Woo, 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 how terrifying. The flying speed of the phoenix was very fast. Soon, they were less than 10,000 li away from the South Heaven Gate. The energy of the explosion had dissipated. The white formation spanned hundreds of miles. At this moment, there were some cracks, but it had not been destroyed. Outside the array, an incomparably huge crater appeared on the ground. Whether it was flowers, trees, birds, beasts, insects, fish, or the earth, everything was completely blasted into nothingness. It was an extremely shocking sight. And Lin finally saw the magnificent bronze gate. It was very, very big, so big that it seemed unreal. The rainbow-colored energy pillars were 1,000,000 zhang tall, supporting 2 doors that looked like small continents. The inside of the doors was a vast expanse of white, giving off a very pure and holy feeling. It was as if what he was searching for lay on the other side of the door, a path to happiness. I really want to go in and have a look. This was a thought that suddenly appeared in Lynn's mind. It came without any warning, but it was extremely realistic. Outside the southern heavenly gate, heavenly goddess Lynn, you heaved a faint sigh at the sight of the group of people on the Phoenix. A wry smile appeared on her face. It really is them? Isn't this a good opportunity for you to exact your revenge? The man chuckled. Heavenly goddess Lynn, you looked at the black, rotten area on her wrist, and she pouted with a pitiable expression. Jordan, how about you do it? I don't want to become ugly again. Heavenly God Jordan burst into laughter. I can't take on him on my own. If you and I attack at the same time, won't we be able to minimize the backlash from the heavenly Tao? Lin Yu thought about it for a moment before reluctantly accepting the suggestion. She admitted that she had underestimated Lin and the others. That was her problem. However, now that the two divine heaven stage cultivators of the southern heavenly gate had joined the fray, there was no chance for them to survive. How about we invite Metal? There's no need. We can't trouble him with something like this. Heavenly God Jordan immediately rejected Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu's suggestion before leading the way. All great generals, heed my command. Annihilate all invaders. The Heavenly God roared. The 9 Heaven Pioneers stage great generals roared in unison, and extremely terrifying auras erupted from their bodies as they followed Jordan toward the front of the battlefield. Lin Yu was a little resigned as she followed behind Jordan, preparing to face Lin and the others head-on. Atop the Phoenix, Dabai drew a sharp intake of breath as he looked up ahead with astonishment. This is different from what I imagined. There are very few of them, but all of them are powerful beings who can take on an army of over 1 million on their own. Yiling was also a little concerned. 9 new Tao integration stage heavenly humans and 2 divine heaven stage heavenly humans with God of creation stage power. The fifth sage's lips twitched. He was starting to wonder why he had tried so hard to join the extermination team in the first place. Oh, that's right. He had thought that there would be a bunch of cannon fodder for him to hammer, and he would be able to witness an epic battle as he pummeled the cannon fodder. However, reality was cruel. After arriving here, he tragically discovered that he couldn't even hammer a single one of them. Thankfully, the heavenly human tribe is restricted to varying degrees by the heavenly Tao. Otherwise, we really would have no choice but to turn tail and run. Black Spirit Snake licked her lips as she drew her massive sword, and the battle intent in her eyes surged. And Lin caught sight of Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu in the distance, who was looking at him with an indescribable smile on her face. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu had noticed in Lin's gaze, and she extended her inky black wrist before making a knife hand gesture toward his neck. Was she really that childish? And Lin couldn't help but grumble in his heart. He put on a disdainful expression, but he had to admit that he was a little panicked, because he felt that he was being watched. The man beside Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu was also a divine heaven stage cultivator. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu was the only heavenly god known to the outside world, most likely because she would occasionally go out to scare people. However, who would have thought that there would be another heavenly god at the southern heavenly gate? This was a gate guarded by 2 heavenly gods. And Lin was astonished, but he could accept this. The southern heavenly gate was like a tiger's den, and he was already prepared for an enemy that was more powerful than he had imagined. As for how he was going to deal with this, he only had one word to say: fight. Chapter 1541. Tao Heavenly Spell Technique, Heavenly Spear. The 9 Heaven Pioneer stage great generals were bathed in the light descending from the heavens as they made hand seals to materialize a spear that exuded extremely powerful energy fluctuations before them. The spears were pure white and imbued with the purest sharpness, as well as the will of the heavens that could destroy all things. The will of the heavens was similar to the absolute power of the heavenly gods, and the dazzling might of the heavens was on full display as soon as the 9 spears appeared. If a living being with a lower cultivation base were to be pointed at by the spears, they would have a hole punctured through their body before the spears even had a chance to fly. Now all of the spears were aimed at the phoenix in the sky. The spears of heaven left a series of white trajectories in their wake as they pierced through space toward the phoenix at an extremely terrifying speed. It was also at this moment that they were struck by the powerful will of the heavens that wanted to kill them. The phoenix let loose a sharp cry as it spread open its wings, upon which a thick suit of armor appeared around its body. The spears of heaven crashed into the thick suit of armor, upon which an extremely sharp screeching sound erupted. The Tao integration stage, armor materialized from divine flames, began to slowly crumble. The three heavenly human tribe great generals combined their powers to battle a veteran Tao integration stage super mighty figure. Now that the 9 heavenly human tribe great generals were attacking at the same time, they were naturally quite powerful. However, it was also at this moment that the power of the celestial arch, black spirit snake, white spirit snake, and Enlin converged upon the phoenix's armor at the same time to pulverize the 9 spears of heaven. This won't pose any threat to those Tao integration stage super mighty figures, as most of them are super mighty figures at the Tao integration pinnacle stage, Heavenly God Jordan said in an indifferent voice. Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu nodded slightly as her golden eyes reflected the rapidly approaching man. And Lin, you be Astra-starred. I've decided to kill all of you in 59 seconds. She had shortened the 1-minute time limit by an entire second, as if she was trying to wash away the humiliation she had suffered. And Lin was astonished, and so were all of his companions. There was no one else in the world who could say such harsh words by name. This kind of treatment, this kind of standard, this kind of treatment. Big brother, and you've been targeted, woof. Dabai drew a sharp intake of breath. He chased Heavenly Goddess Lin Yu for over 5,000 kilometers. Bai Ling couldn't help but chuckle. Let's decide who will be fighting as soon as possible, the Celestial Arch suggested. And Lin felt like crying. Do I have a choice? If he chose to fight the male heavenly god, Lin Yu would most likely attack him from behind. The phoenix cried out, indicating that it would fight alongside Enlin. A smile appeared on the celestial Thearcha's face. Black spirit snake, white spirit snake, and I will take on the male heavenly god. And Lin's expression darkened upon hearing this. The 3 of you are at the Tao integration pinnacle stage fighting a heavenly god, while I, a return to void stage cultivator, and a crying monster are fighting another heavenly god? What kind of arrangement was this? Was the Celestial Arch serious? Unexpectedly, the Celestial Arch said in a very serious manner, Others may not know your strength, but do you think I don't? Setting aside other Tao integration stage mighty figures, you're definitely a professional when it comes to dealing with heavenly human tribe mighty figures and heavenly gods. I'm also trying to maximize my resources in order to achieve victory. And Lin's mouth twitched involuntarily. The Celestial Arch really thought highly of him. However, in this arrangement, there was indeed a higher chance of success for both sides. The phoenix flew onward, and at this moment, all of the Heaven Pioneer stage heavenly human tribe mighty figures had already formed up into a unique formation. And Lin was quite concerned upon seeing this. The combination attack of the 3 great generals was far too powerful, and it was comparable to that of a veteran Tao integration stage mighty figure. No one else would be able to handle it. Bai Ling seemed to have guessed what Enlin was thinking, and she took the initiative to speak. I have an essence formation jammer that can disrupt the enemy's formation as well as their combination spell formations. However, it expends too much energy and can only last for 5 minutes. We must defeat all of the Heaven Pioneer stage great generals within 5 minutes. And Lin heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing this. Xiao Hong and Tina's battle intent soared even higher. 5 minutes was enough for them to do a lot of things. Look out! The Celestial Arch suddenly yelled, Heavenly Sword. Countless inky black symbols formed a barrier that instantly enshrouded the phoenix. It was also at this moment that Heavenly God Jordan's figure appeared before the phoenix. The golden divine halo on his right hand rotated at high speed, and his fist came crashing down with earth-shattering might. Bam! Shockwaves surged for over 100 kilometers. The heavenly sword caved in that instant. Disperse! And Lin yelled. Their enemies weren't going to give them any time to communicate. Dabai, Xiaohong, Merlin, Cassidy, Xianyuan Cheng, Su Qinyun, Yiling, Tina, Sun Yulaw, Yao Mingshi Bai Ling, and the fifth sage all dispersed at the same time. The heavenly human tribe great generals had already received orders to hunt down the return to void stage mighty figures. As for the Tao integration stage, super mighty figures, they were naturally left to the heavenly God stage mighty figures. Only then would there be no doubt as to who would emerge victorious. These are just a bunch of ants. We should be able to finish them off faster than the heavenly gods. A great general chuckled coldly as he chased after a dog. Kill them as quickly as possible, then help the heavenly gods. Another great general wore an expressionless expression as he looked at the mighty figures before him, as if he were looking at a bunch of dead people. The 9 heavenly human tribe great generals split up into groups of 3 and chased down the scattered return to void stage mighty figures. If it weren't for the sake of safety, they wouldn't even bother using their combination spell formation. It was also at this moment that Bai Ling suddenly tossed a mechanical ball into the air. The mechanical ball suddenly expanded into a flat surface. Immediately following, which invisible radiation enshrouded an area with a radius of over 1,500 kilometers. Almost all of the heavenly human tribe mighty figures' auras were thrown into disarray at this moment, and the combination spell formation formed by the heavenly human tribe great generals suddenly lost connection. The heavenly human tribe great generals were dumbstruck. This was the first time they had encountered a combination spell formation that had suddenly lost connection. Even the divine heaven stage Lin Yu and Jordan's expressions shifted slightly. Let's go. Bai Ling's clear voice sounded. Tina, Xianyuan Cheng, and the others suddenly turn around and pounce toward the heavenly human tribe great generals. One spell technique after another engulfed the heavenly human tribe mighty figures. Black Spirit Snake and White Spirit Snake charged toward heavenly god Jordan with divine swords in their hands. And Lin stood atop his phoenix and pounced toward heavenly goddess Linyu. His divine flames blazed through the air as a black light erupted from his evil-slaying sword. Hee, perfect timing. I'm going to show you the price you have to pay for chasing me for over 5,000 kilometers. Heavenly goddess Ling Yu chuckled coldly as a golden divine halo appeared around her wrist, and her aura soared explosively as she charged toward the man riding the phoenix at even faster speed. The setting sun dyed the clouds red, and the crimson hue in the sky became even more pronounced. The blood moon became even more sinister as it eclipsed the radiance of the moon. The most intense battle in the history of the heavenly human tribe had finally erupted at this moment.